Chapter 563. Without thinking too much, Lu Cheng squatted down abruptly based on his past experience and instinctive sense of danger. He guided his qi, blood force, and spirit to gather in his lower abdomen. At this moment, Gu, whose black hair was mixed with silver, revealed a cold look in his eyes. Red and white intertwined in his eyes. He exhaled and said, "Army." Without any hand signs or preamble, it was released with the sound. Inside the elevator, a sinister wind suddenly swept up. A sinister wind filled with the smell of blood and brimming with icy sharpness blew towards Lu Cheng from all directions. Spirit changed reality. This was an ability that only physical invulnerability martial artists possessed. The chilly wind poured into Lu Cheng's body, but he seemed to have turned into a corpse. There was no sign of life in him, so the blade and blood couldn't produce any effect. The combination of essence, qi, spirit, will, and strength was the dance stage. If Lu Cheng was a split second slower, his spirit would be attacked and his mind would be shaken. His thoughts would fall into fear, and he wouldn't be able to do anything even if he wanted to. If he was too early, his opponent would have enough time to change his strategy. The power of the ice mirror was just right, not too early or too late. Ji's expression didn't change. He was mentally prepared for the failure of his attack. Facing the squatting Lu Cheng, he imagined his opponent's counterattack. He raised his right palm and aimed it at his enemy like a mirror. Bam! With a muffled explosion, a red fireball shot out from his palm and blasted towards Lu Cheng. On both sides of him, the doors of the elevator closed inwards. After sensing someone was there, they opened again in dismay. Boom! Lu Cheng's Dan force exploded, and his right arm swelled. As he stood up, he punched at the fireball. Covered in blazing white, his glove was heavy. Boom! The shockwave from the explosion shook the elevator. In Lu Cheng's eyes, the young man with black hair mixed with silver was surrounded by red and white. The red was like fire and the white was like ice. They intertwined with each other like a crimson dragon and a frost serpent. The smell of jindan? Not good. A strong premonition of danger surged in Lu Cheng's heart. He couldn't care less about hiding his strength and directly operated his qi and blood, mobilizing all the power of the jindan in his lower abdomen that he could currently mobilize. In the blink of an eye, every muscle in his body was filled with blood and expanded. His greenish-black fascia was exposed inch by inch. He suddenly grew taller by more than 10 centimeters, and was twice as strong as before. He punched forward like a deity that had descended from the heavens, blowing up the air and temporarily turning the surroundings into nothingness. At this moment, the crimson dragon and ice hornless serpent circling around Guyu had already pounced out, intertwining and biting towards Lu Cheng, intending to devour him. Rumble! The huge explosion shook the elevator, and the violent shockwave caused the surrounding metal walls to cave in. Cracks spread everywhere, and some parts were charred black and some were frozen. The elevator was completely stuck on this floor. When the commotion spread, many people listened attentively. In the surveillance room, the corresponding alarm sounded. The security personnel jumped to their feet and scanned the screen, looking for the cause. The crimson dragon and ice hornless serpent broke apart inch by inch and fell like rain. Lu Cheng stood in the middle, unable to take a single step forward. Around his fist, several patches of skin had been torn off. His flesh was mangled, his bones were cracked, and his clothes were in tatters. Some were burning, some were hanging on ice crystals. One could see his sunken ribs, muscles that were almost torn apart, and horrifying skin. His heart was filled with fear, doubt, and panic at the sudden appearance of a powerful enemy. However, these negative thoughts were quickly suppressed by the ice mirror, and didn't cause any ripples. In the face of life and death, the only thing that matters is a fine line. Guyu's expression changed slightly. Without hesitation he spoke again. Confrontation. The ancient sound evoked the mystery, cleansing him of his condition. The abrasions caused by the shockwave rapidly healed. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, felt as though someone had drained him of his strength and spirit. He couldn't suppress the sleepiness and exhaustion that surged to his head, almost causing him to faint. His heart tightened. He immediately circulated his qi and blood to stimulate his body. He used the simplified wholeness formula for the second time, allowing the light in his eyes to gather again. However, This wasted precious time. Guyu placed his palms together, one above the other. In the center of his palms, a crystal ball with a white base and crimson spots appeared. It was like a mirage of the starry sky. With a solemn expression, he flipped his palms and pushed them forward, striking out the resplendent ball. From the beginning until now, he had given it his all. Once he took the initiative, he used his most powerful killer moves in order to end the battle quickly. The crimson and white reflected in his eyes grew bigger and bigger. The fear in Lu Cheng's heart subsided instead of rising. Without relying on the ice mirror, he entered the indifferent overlooking state of the all-seeing God. He quickly and calmly visualized the boundless dark and cold universe, as well as the accumulation of dust to ignite his Vairocana. Bam! He shook out his left arm like a robot and shot out his fist. The surface of his fist was covered in a layer of darkness. As soon as the darkness came into contact with the resplendent ball, it immediately plunged the surroundings into a pitch-black darkness, following which, a blinding light exploded, followed by an exaggerated, dull sound. Rumble. The elevator was already distorted beyond recognition. Guyu took 2 steps back. His t-shirt was still intact, but Lu Cheng, who was surrounded by flames and mist, had a few broken bones. His left arm was charred black and hanging limply. His legs were visibly trembling, his muscles trembling. Seeing his opponent's calm and bloodthirsty gaze, Guyu opened his mouth again calmly. Before Lu Cheng pounced, he spat out a word. Formation. The ancient voice reverberated. The air around Lu Cheng solidified inch by inch, turning into steel plates that bound him to the spot. In his eyes, his enemy, whose black hair was mixed with silver, raised his right hand and formed a sword with his fingers. At the tip of the sword, a white, dangerous light gathered and aimed at the dangerous light on Lu Cheng's forehead. At the same time, there was a sigh in his eyes, as though he was sending Lu Cheng off to his death. Ignoring the damage to his body, Lu Cheng reached an equilibrium. Gritting his teeth, he borrowed the power of the nebula in his lower abdomen to compress his qi, blood, spirit, and fire force, pushing them away from the darkness at the edge. Just as the light was about to shoot out, Guyu saw Lu Cheng's Dan force gushing out. Dragging the bindings, he pushed his palm forward with difficulty. They were more than a meter apart. Guyu's lips curled. He was about to end his opponent's life with the ice prison holy light. At this moment, Lu Cheng's palm hit the void lightly. The temperature in front of him dropped sharply. A faint blue light condensed and spread rapidly, freezing Guyu's body. That dangerous white light shot out at the same time. After penetrating layers of ice, it landed on Lu Cheng's other raised palm. Half of it was penetrated, but no blood flowed out. It was sparkling. The complete version of the Lament of the Ice Queen. Crack. Lu Cheng used the stimulation of pain to summon his remaining strength, and completely broke free of the bindings. Pushing off with his feet, he pounced at his dangerous enemy, whose body was sealed in ice. His bloody fist burst out from his waist and hit his opponent's abdomen with a bang. He didn't have any thoughts and could only make an instinctive judgment. Since his opponent had been attacking from afar, he had to drag him into a melee fight. It's either you die or I die. No, I have to leave this place alive. Lu Cheng's aura surged and shook Guyu's heart, making him feel fear that he hadn't felt in a long time. He hurriedly activated the Jindan he had formed and squeezed out a few times more strength. Crack! The ice layer shattered. Guyu's muscles bulged, causing his black t-shirt to burst. His left arm thickened by 2 times, like the arm of an evil spirit. Then he threw a punch at his opponent's attack. He had enough confidence in this punch. He was sure that no inhuman martial artist would be able to withstand it. If he didn't take advantage of the opportunity to retreat, he would definitely suffer a fracture, or even worse. Boom. The 2 fists collided with a deafening explosion. Guyu could feel Lu Cheng's weakness. A flash of joy flashed across his heart. Before his joy faded, he suddenly heard the sound of bones breaking. He saw that his opponent's hand and arm were twisted abnormally. However, he didn't back down at all. Instead, he pressed his feet inward and crushed the metal at the edge of the elevator into pieces. Poof! Guyu's punch broke Lu Cheng's fist and arm. It didn't stop there. It hit his abdomen, piercing through his flesh and destroying a part of his intestines. Why isn't he retreating? Guyu was stunned. He saw that Lu Cheng's eyes were calm to the point of coldness. However, they also showed the desire to live and the desire to show off. His abdomen muscles wriggled, binding Guyu's unretracted fist. His unbroken right arm had already been raised. Along with the activation of the simplified fighting formula, when enemies meet on a narrow path, the brave wins. Lu Cheng's eyes were wide open. His right fist, with his bulging arm, swung at Guyu's head. Guyu hurriedly raised his arm, and formed a layer of ice to block. Bam! The punch landed. With a crack, Guyu's ice layer shattered and his arm bent. In a contest of physical strength, Lu Cheng had the absolute upper hand. He roared. Without thinking about the backlash, he used the simplified fighting formula again. His fist gathered strength on the spot and swung downwards again. Guyu panicked. He opened his mouth and spat out a life-saving cold light at Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng didn't dodge. He merely tilted his head, letting the cold light graze his face with a piece of flesh. Bam! The air exploded. His fist smashed into Guyu's head, smashing it into pieces. Crimson and milky white spurted diagonally behind him like a watermelon that was run over by a car. Thump thump. 2 exploded eyeballs fell to the ground one after another, leaving behind traces of despair. Guyu's bloody fist retreated from Lu Cheng's abdomen. Together with his body, which only had half a head left, they fell backward. From the beginning until now, the whole process had taken less than 20 seconds. Lu Cheng was just about to catch his breath when he suddenly sensed danger. He hurriedly moved his broken and unbroken arms, one below and the other above to protect his vital parts. His body also quickly curled into a ball in an attempt to minimize the damage. Boom! At Guyu's lower abdomen, his Jindan went out of control and exploded. Crimson and white light engulfed the surroundings, destroying 2 walls and leaving Lu Cheng with bruises all over. The wind and waves receded. His body was still curled up. He felt very sleepy and cold. He couldn't open his eyes. His vitality was quickly draining away in the darkness. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. If I sleep, I won't wake up. Lu Cheng tried his best to think of his parents. He thought of Yenjika's beautiful and shy face. He thought of all the scenes of the past. He used them to ignite a strong desire to live. He held on with a strong will. After an unknown amount of time, he finally heard the sound of noisy footsteps and the sound of cold air being sucked in. Luckily, there's an emergency room in the martial arts arena. His thoughts gradually blurred. In the Sky Moon martial arts arena, the audience was attracted by the fierce battle in the arena and didn't notice anything else. After a while, they realized that the emergency room was in chaos. Chapter 564. Huaqinglonghu Club Volcano Laboratory. Empress Luo, Ning Zitong answered the call. Her expression turned serious. She covered the receiver and looked at Dragon King Chen Qitao and Optimus Prime Longzhen. She said in a low voice, Lu Cheng has been attacked. The surroundings turned dark and the voltage seemed to have dropped. Dragon King clasped his hands and asked, "How's the situation?" "His life is in danger." Ning Zitong replied concisely. "Luckily Li Wade is in Linfu. We should be able to save him." Li Wade was in his 40s and was at the peak of inhuman. He could have reached the physical invulnerability stage back then. When there was no hope for him to break through, he developed his interest in medicine to the extreme. Without any foundation, he studied Western medicine step by step and mixed it with medicine, acupuncture, and other things. With his steady hands and the ability to see the smallest details, he became one of the top doctors in the country. He was especially good at surgery. He had also signed up for the Battle of the Kings qualifiers. His main purpose was to join in the fun and meet his old friends. "Where's the attacker?" Chen Qitao asked calmly. "He was killed by Lu Cheng." Ning Zitong's beautiful face was filled with doubt. Chen Qitao nodded slightly and released his clasped hands. He stood up abruptly and walked out of the door. The surrounding lights flickered without any wind. As he walked, he said sternly, "Spread the news. Let Linfu connect with the military system. When I arrive, I want to see the most detailed report." Okay. As a senior expert, Ning Zitong actually followed Dragon King's lead at this moment. She pondered for a few seconds and followed suit. She turned to Longzhen and said, I'm going to Linfu too. Watch over here. Wuyue Province, Moshang City. Due to the Battle of the Kings, the professional matches were suspended for 2 weeks. Shi Yuejian was at home studying cooking. At this moment, her phone vibrated continuously. It seemed to be in a hurry. With a shake of her wrist, the water on her palm turned into ice and fell. Shi Yuejian picked up the phone, put it to her ear and answered the call. Her leisurely smile slowly sank. Her brows furrowed in suspicion and anger. Dad. After hanging up the phone, Shi Yuejian paused for a few seconds and shouted in the direction of the living room. Geezer Shi, who was bored watching the match, shouted, "What's wrong? I didn't drink." Something happened to junior brother. Shi Yuejian walked into the living room. What? Geezer Shi stood up abruptly. At first he looked confused and puzzled. Then his face darkened and his eyes turned cold and serious, just like when he was roaming the war-torn zones. Didn't that brat just finish his match not long ago? Little junior brother was attacked when he went to the underground parking lot. He was seriously injured, Shi Yuejian said. Geezer Shi opened his mouth and was about to ask when he suddenly coughed violently. He coughed so hard that his face turned red and his lungs felt like bellows. Longhu has found Li Wade. He's operating on him now, Shi Yuejian quickly added when her father's coughing subsided. Did you catch anyone? Geezer Shi panted and asked. He was killed by junior brother on the spot. Shi Yuejian answered truthfully. Geezer Shi's eyebrows trembled and he frowned. A strong sense of doubt arose in his pure anger. He originally thought that it was some enemy who wanted to provoke a war, but who knew that it was not what he imagined. If it was a physical invulnerability expert, the brat would definitely not be able to escape. What was the purpose of that? After pondering for a moment, Geezer Shi waved his hand and said, "Ask the military to arrange a plane for me. I'm going to Linfu." "I'm going too," Shi Yuejian said resolutely. Xing Province, Xioshan City. Yenjika leaned against the pillow, half lying and half sitting on the bed. Her legs were crossed and her tablet was placed on top of her head. After watching the other matches, she picked up the phone beside her and turned on the screen. However, she did not see Lu Cheng's reply. Only the content of the conversation was shown. "Go to basement 2 and take a taxi back to the hotel." Clenching fist expression, Lu Cheng said. "Why don't you go for supper to replenish your energy? After all, you almost lost the match." Covering mouth expression, she said. "Gotcha." Locking her phone again, Yenjika shifted her gaze back to the tablet. She looked for new resources and watched the match between Lu Cheng and Ji Tong repeatedly. After a few minutes, she picked up her phone again. She still did not see a reply. She could not help but ask, "Still not in the car?" After waiting patiently for a while, she still did not hear the familiar special reminder. Yenjika looked at the screen from time to time and felt a little anxious. Why is Cheng not replying? If there is something, he will tell me in advance. Stuck in the elevator? The girl could not control herself and sent another message. However, it was like throwing a stone into the ocean. She put away the tablet, got off the bed and paced back and forth with her legs crossed. Is Cheng angry? But I was just joking. And he is not such a petty person. Could it be that his phone ran out of battery? But every time his phone was at 10%, he would say something. But there was a news report saying that some phones would run out of battery when they were at less than 20%. Or maybe his phone suddenly broke down. Yenjika thought of all kinds of reasons and tried to calm herself down and wait. However, more than 10 minutes had passed. She looked at her phone again and again, but there was still no reply. She was not in the mood to do anything else. Taking a light breath, Yenjika opened her contact list and dialed Lu Cheng's number. Beep, beep, beep. The number you have dialed is switched off. Please try again later. The girl was stunned for a moment. She instinctively dialed again for confirmation. Beep, beep, beep. The number you have dialed is switched off. Please try again later. Listening to the emotionless voice, Yenjika's phone froze beside her ear. Is his phone really broken? She forced out her dimples and comforted herself. If Cheng dropped his phone, I will laugh at him for the rest of his life. Yenjika tried to think in a positive direction, but bad thoughts came one after another. Yenjika gradually became restless and restless. She looked at the night sky outside and bit her lip. Ignoring her embarrassment, she ran out of the bedroom and went to her parents' door. She knocked on it. What's wrong? Ji Mingyu opened the door in her pajamas and asked in confusion. Mom, do you know anyone from Linfu? I can't get in touch with Chung. I'm worried about him. Yenjika did not hide her wild thoughts. If you don't know him, I can ask Grandpa and Grandma to ask the Shushan Studies disciples. How long has it been? Ji Mingyu frowned. More than 20 minutes. If he wasn't stuck in traffic, he would have reached the hotel. He would have definitely gone online and told me. Yenjika rubbed her right foot on the carpet and answered in frustration and confusion. At this moment, her phone suddenly rang. It vibrated strongly, and the ringtone was melodious. Looking over, she saw that it was her grandfather. Yenjika's heartbeat quickened inexplicably. Thump, 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 as if something was about to jump out of her throat. Hello, Grandpa? She picked up and asked carefully. Hurry to Linfu. Something happened to Lucheng, Ji Jianzhang said calmly. Something's wrong, something's wrong. Yenjika's hand trembled, and her eyes suddenly froze. The phone in her hand with a metallic luster slipped and fell on the carpet with a thud. Linfu Airport. Dragon King, Chen Qitao, and Empress Luo had just entered the reception car when they received the detailed report. The cameras at the scene were destroyed and the surveillance cameras in the areas where the attacker passed by were also disrupted. However, we still managed to find a small amount of video footage. After an emergency investigation and questioning in the city, we have basically locked down the attacker's hotel and his behavior during this period. Combining the information with the portrait of the witnesses and the connection with the intelligence system, we have confirmed that the attacker is Gu Hui, Princess Irina's tutor from the Samano royal family. He studied abroad at the age of 18 and completed his immigration before graduation. We initially tried to establish a good relationship with him and planted a chess piece in the Samano royal family, but he rejected us. The Samano royal family? Ning Zitong muttered in confusion. Why did they attack Lucheng? Lucheng worked as a security guard for the Samano royal family last month, but did not have any conflicts with them. The military personnel added. Dragon King leaned back in his chair, his eyes half closed. Tapping his fingers on the armrest, he muttered to himself in a low voice, the Samano royal family. He opened his eyes abruptly. They were dark but bright, as though the brightest star in the night sky was hidden within. He said calmly, wait until Lucheng wakes up. Dragon King was easily angered, but he was not reckless. Yes, sir. We will analyze the items and remains of Gu Hui in the hotel next. The military personnel replied solemnly. The next day, 9 in the morning. Outside the operating theater, the atmosphere seemed to have frozen. The medical personnel moving in and out were cautious, like ships in a storm. A total of 6 physical invulnerability mighty ones had gathered in this small place. The Dragon King was sitting on a bench, waiting with his eyes closed. Geezer Shi was drinking hard liquor and coughing from time to time. Shi Yuejian and Ning Zitong were standing by the window not far away. They had no desire to talk and were pacing back and forth. Ji Jianzhang and Dou Ning were sitting on either side of Yenjika. Yenjika's fingers were subconsciously intertwined. Her eyes were slightly red as she stared at the door. Her expression was firm and stubborn, as though she was supporting her partner in the operating theater. Ji Mingyu and Yan Kai looked at her worriedly. After another half an hour, the lights changed. The operation was finally completed. Wearing a mask, Li Wade felt a strong gust of wind the moment he stepped out of the operating theater. He saw many pairs of eyes staring at him. Not daring to show his humorous side, he took off his mask, cleared his throat and said, "The operation went well. The patient's will to live is very strong. As for my skills, I'm not bad either. I'm out of danger, but I still need to observe him for a while." Hearing this, Yenjika's vision blurred. She heard the sound of her own exhalation, and the choking sound that she had suppressed for a long time. She wiped her face. It was full of wet marks. Seeing that Geezer Shi and the rest had heaved a sigh of relief, Li Wade coughed twice and said, "However, with such a serious injury, I can't guarantee how much he can recover in the future, and whether he can reach physical invulnerability. Moreover, he paused for a while and continued. Moreover, he overexerted himself and suffered a serious backlash. There might be some sequelae. Chapter 565. Sequelae? What's there to be afraid of? It's fine as long as he's alive. Can it be worse than mine? Geyser scoffed at Li Wade's warning. He appeared confident and didn't reveal any of his worries. With the Ji couple, Dragon King, Empress Luo, and Yen girl's parents here, as her master, he had to support his silly disciple and not let them have any bad thoughts. Dad, you're cursing junior brother. Shi Yuejian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If it wasn't for the military's research that coincidentally suppressed your injury, you wouldn't be alive and kicking now. Don't say that. It's just a possibility, not a certainty. Ning Zitong chimed in. Yenjika suddenly took a deep breath and looked into the operating room. Amid the intertwining auras of the physical invulnerability experts, she bit her lip and said firmly, "It's fine if it's not a problem. Technology is improving and so is martial arts. As long as he's alive, there's hope. As long as he's alive, there's a chance of recovery." She had said those words to comfort Chung back then, telling him not to dwell on Coach Shi's old injury. Now she said those words not only to herself and Chung, who was lying inside, but also to her parents, grandfather and grandmother. Geyser Shi was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Yenjika to be so clear-headed at such a time. Yeah, Yin girl is soft on the outside but tough on the inside. She's a person who can make up her mind. He nodded approvingly and turned to Qin Chi Tao. Dragon King, come with me to the scene and see what we can find. Okay. Qin Chi Tao's expression didn't change as he nodded solemnly. However, he, who had been resting on the bench with his eyes closed, stood up at some point and stood at the outermost circle of the crowd. After that, other than Shi Yuejian, who stayed in the hospital to accompany Yen Zhika, Ji Mingyu, and Yen Kai, and guard Lu Cheng in the ICU to prevent further accidents from happening, Ji Jianzhang, Do Ning, and Empress Luo followed Geyser Shi and Dragon King to Sky Moon Martial Arts Stadium in a car and entered the basement car park. At the location of the battle, one of the load-bearing pillars had already been broken, and several walls had completely collapsed. Concrete and steel fragments were everywhere, and some of them still had a small part of it left. The burn marks were obvious, and it showed the tragedy of the battle. The elevator was damaged beyond recognition. The metal was twisted and deformed, and it was stuck on this floor. However, as long as there was movement, it would sway, as if it would fall to the bottom at any moment. The final explosion destroyed most of the traces of the battle. Beads of sweat appeared on the military personnel's forehead as he introduced them. The solemn yet imposing manner of the physical invulnerability experts was extremely stressful. I wouldn't be able to create an explosion of this level and range. It's hard to do unless I'm at the brink of death, Yenjika's grandmother, Do Ning, said after a few seconds of silence. She looked to be in her 40s. Her facial features were quite similar to Ji Mingyu's, but she was gentler and had a graceful and elegant temperament. A physical invulnerability expert? The military personnel seized the opportunity to ask. However, if he was a physical invulnerability expert, how could he possibly die here when dealing with a mere inhuman mighty one? The power isn't concentrated enough. It's very scattered. The expert in explosions, Dragon King Chen Qizhen, commented with disdain. He has the appearance of a physical invulnerability expert, but he doesn't have the strength. Then he might not be a martial artist. Yenjika's grandfather, Ji Jianzhang, nodded thoughtfully. Don't be fooled by his scholarly appearance, as if he was an otherworldly expert. He used to be a killer in the war-torn zones and had seen experts of different systems and all kinds of strange techniques. Geyser Shi and Ning Zitong exchanged glances. Just from this point alone, they had a rough idea. He coughed a few times and said, "What did you find from the items the attacker left behind in the hotel?" His initial plan was to leave immediately once he got what he wanted and not return to the hotel. The items he left behind were all unimportant. There was a hand-drawn map of the Guanhai, Tianyue, and other martial arts stadiums, as well as a map of the locations of surveillance cameras. This shows that he had been at those locations a few times beforehand. There was also a process computer. We did a data recovery and found some content. There were traces of surfing the internet in Huaqing, various collected information on Lucheng, and browsing records on travel forums. This might be related to his subsequent hiding plans. The military personnel reported truthfully. Unfortunately, it was useless even after analyzing all this. Guhui died on the spot and couldn't escape. I can't see his motive from this. Dou Ning frowned slightly. If there's no other way, I'll make a trip to Europe and pay a visit to the Samana royal family. Their Princess Irina should know something, Dragon King Chen Qitao said calmly. However, such words sent chills down the military personnel's spine. He had to say it, even if he didn't want to. At the thought of this, he quickly added, "We extracted the DNA from the attacker's incomplete body, and are seizing the opportunity to analyze and compare it. Soon, we will be able to determine if he's a martial artist, a grandmaster of combat, or something else." Once one stepped into the inhuman stage, the DNA would mutate and produce supernatural abilities. Although all the sects in the world had the same goal and behaved very similarly at this stage, before the final consensus was reached, due to the different cultivation methods and different DNA mutations, a preliminary judgment could be made based on this. Chen Qitao didn't say anything else. His eyes swept across the severely damaged scene and examined the details again. Paranoia and compulsion were one of the sources of his success. At night, Yan Xiaoling logged into the forum and asked excitedly, "Is the matchup list out yet? Is it out yet? Is it out yet? Please slow down your clock by 5 minutes. Thank you." Brahman had been spending a lot of time online recently. "I'm just afraid that they'll announce it earlier," Yan Xiaoling replied, picking flowers one by one. After some discussion, she glanced at the bottom right corner of the computer and refreshed the Battle of the Kings official website. Then she saw a piece of news. Lu Qing withdrew due to injury. She clicked on it hurriedly and saw that the content was only a dozen words more than the title. Lu Qing withdrew from the Battle of the Kings due to injury and won't be participating in the subsequent matches. What happened? What happened? Yan Xiaoling didn't care to use a cute typo and sent the link to the news while asking anxiously. The shorter the news, the bigger the issue. Bull Demon King made a gasp emoji. "Hit you." Brahman and Nye Chi replied at the same time. How did Lu Qing get injured? Could it be caused by the fight with Jitong that day? Daxing divine boxing, hitting a bull through a mountain. He didn't get injured at the scene, and then it happened afterward? A plumber eating mushrooms was also puzzled. How is that possible? If Jitong had this kind of ability, he would have come out and made a fuss. Unparalleled Dragon King, refuted without hesitation. Could it be that Daxing Temple is secretly taking revenge? Then wouldn't Dragon King be furious? Or it could be that Lu Cheng's bug combo exceeded his limit. Of course, it could also be that something went wrong when he was practicing martial arts. Seeing that unparalleled Dragon King couldn't make a definite judgment, Yan Xiaoling anxiously took out her phone and exited the QQ group. She found Senior Yan and quickly typed, "Senior Yan, what happened to Lu Cheng?" She maintained a good relationship with Yan Zhika and often contacted her. Not long after she sent out the message, she felt that such a sentence didn't seem right with her EQ. Senior Yan must be very sad that Lu Qing is injured. I'm stabbing a knife into her heart by asking so casually. After realizing this, she tried to withdraw the message but failed miserably. Forget it, the ignorant are not guilty. Yan Xiaoling thought optimistically and waited for a reply. However, she didn't see Yan Zhika come online. In the Linfu Food Group discussion group, and Chaoyang first posted, Lu Qing withdrew due to injury, and then added, I heard from my master that Lu Qing is out of danger. There were many witnesses at the scene. By the time Dragon King knew about it and ordered a lockdown, it was already too late. The inhuman martial artists in Linhai who had a high status or a wide circle of friends had more or less heard about it. However, they didn't dare to offend Dragon King and didn't expose it online. That's good. I knew he wouldn't die so easily, replied physics worker Peng Liyun immediately. Renli echoed, and then asked, when are we going to see him? Let's wait until he wakes up. Otherwise, it's no different from waiting here for news. replied Peng Liyun after thinking for a while. Yeah, we haven't figured out the situation yet. He must be under protection. We might not be able to see him even if we go now. And Chaoyang explained from another angle. He then said with interest, I heard that Lu Qing defeated a physical invulnerability expert this time? That's unbelievable. Not a physical invulnerability expert. It's just a practitioner of another system with some characteristics of a physical invulnerability expert, replied Renly seriously according to the information she received. That's pretty impressive too. I didn't expect Husky, who wags his tail every time he looks at his phone, to be able to defeat someone stronger than him in a battle of life and death. His mentality and decisiveness are off the charts. If I were to fight him like that, I'd probably be the one to die. Peng Liyun couldn't help but sigh. When I'm close to physical invulnerability, I want to go to the war-torn zones to train for half a year and improve my actual combat skills, said Renly eagerly. She already had an idea. What about you? Me. Have you ever seen a physicist enter the battlefield personally? Asked Peng Liyun amused. Just because you don't want a battle of life and death, doesn't mean others will cooperate with you. Accidents are unpredictable. Husky is an example. Instead of being caught in a surprise attack and not knowing what to do, it's better to take the initiative to attack. That way, he can grasp the intensity of the attack and improve his experience. If he encounters danger in the future, he'll be able to deal with it calmly, explained Renly. After a moment of silence, Peng Liyun said, That makes sense. I have to learn from Husky on this too, added in Chaoyang. After a few seconds, Peng Liyun asked blankly, Can Husky see our chat history? Of course he can. And Chaoyang didn't understand. What would he think of the nickname Husky? Covering face expression and sighing expression. And Chaoyang was stunned. Because Lu Qing wasn't around, they unknowingly used Husky in the chat just now. Can we delete the chat history? Asked Renly weakly. No. We can't delete his. Replied in Chaoyang helplessly. Hipster, let's disband this discussion group. I don't know if this will work, said Peng Liyun desperately. The darkness was fading. Lu Qing tried his best to keep his eyelids open and search for the light. After some difficult attempts, he finally saw a blurry scene. His senses began to return to his surroundings. As his vision gradually cleared, Lu Qing heard hurried footsteps. Yenjika's beautiful face was reflected in his eyes. The sun shone on her, making her fair skin rosy and her eyes sparkling. I'm still alive. I can still see Coco. Lu Cheng's lips twitched and slowly curled up. You're awake? Asked Yenjika in surprise and joy. She didn't dare to speak too loudly for fear that she would knock Qing out. After asking, her eyes turned and she subconsciously blurted out. What are you smiling about? Smiling like a fool when he just woke up. Is there something wrong with his brain? I was scared. I was scared that I would see hell when I opened my eyes. Luckily I saw my little fairy. Lu Qing felt that his voice was terribly hoarse. He panted as he answered. Yenjika's eyes reddened. She jerked her head to the side and wiped her tears with her hand. What are you talking about? Hell. Don't even think about it. After saying that, she hurriedly turned back and asked, How do you feel? She didn't wipe her tears clean. She looked like a little kitten. Lu Qing stared blankly. He tried to focus but felt very dizzy. He barely completed the ice mirror and entered the state of self-reflection. It's like being run over by a 10-wheeled truck. He smiled bitterly as he looked inside himself. I'm afraid I won't be able to get out of bed for at least 20 to 30 days. I won't be able to recover without at least a year and a half. Also, there's a strange weakness in my body. It seems to be from the source. He didn't hide the situation he saw. Phew, I'm fine. I'll be fine after some rest. Yenjika was relieved. Suddenly she exclaimed, Oh, I forgot to call the doctor. I forgot to inform Coach Sher, Grandpa and Grandma. She stood up and walked out of the door. After busying herself for a while, she finally told Geezer Sher and Do Ning the news, and asked them to pass it on to the other physical invulnerability mighty ones and her parents. Lu Qing smiled as he watched her go in and out of the room. He felt peaceful. After the doctor finished his examination and left, he suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "Ku, I'm sorry." "What are you sorry for? You're the victim." Yenjika's eyes widened as she retorted. Lu Qing turned his head to look at her with difficulty. He said seriously and sincerely, "I've been keeping a secret from you. This whole thing started because of this secret. I've been hiding this secret for a long time." Chapter 566. After waking up, Lu Cheng's memory gradually became clearer during the doctor's examination. He remembered the young man with black hair mixed with silver strands. He remembered the feeling of the jindan he emitted. He remembered the 9 words formula he used. He remembered that he was better at long-range attacks, and his body was at most at the beginning of the Dan stage. All the bits and pieces converged. Lu Qing had a preliminary judgment of this. He was a cultivator. He came for the jindan of the Longhu immortal that he got. As for whether he had accomplices and whether there would be more attackers, it was unknown for now. Therefore, for his own safety, for the safety of his parents, for the safety of Ku, and for the safety of his relatives and friends, he had to tell the whole story to his master and the Dragon King. He had to ensure that he could accurately lock on and cut off all future troubles. Based on this, he had to summon up his courage and tell Ku the whole secret. It was an opportunity to untie the knot in his heart and give her a reminder. Besides, after such a close brush with death, he really didn't want to lie to Ku anymore. What's the secret? Yenjika blinked her eyes in confusion. What else do I not know about Cheng? Lu Qing said in a hoarse voice, I've never been a person with martial arts talent. The reason why I can suddenly have the strength and meditation is because I had a lucky encounter. Lucky encounter? Yenjika asked in confusion. For now, she didn't have a deep feeling. It was like listening to a fairy tale told by Andersen. Yes. Lu Qing took a breath and laughed at himself. After hitting on you at the entrance of the martial arts club that day, I thought that after the summer vacation of the 3rd year of high school, my body would be seriously wasted, and I would be very tired after running a few steps. Once I started the martial arts class, I would definitely be embarrassed in front of you. So, I prepared myself at the last minute, and went running at night by the lake. At the Little Seven Cruises, I saw a half-frozen, half-black carp. Its abdomen had a cultivator's jindan like a star from the Longhu immortal. At first, Yenjika couldn't help but smile. She thought that this idiot Cheng was really stupid, especially when it involved her. When the words black carp, jindan, and cultivator entered her ears, she became thoughtful. You absorbed that jindan and got the talent for meditation and abnormal strength? I didn't absorb it. It entered my body by itself. At that time, I was scared out of my wits. I was afraid that I would become a half-frozen, half-black salted fish. Later, I found that I was fine, so I decided to wait and see if it was really a lucky encounter. It could make me meditate quickly, and when my strength dropped to a certain level, it would spare some energy to help me make up for it. Lu Qing described what had happened at that time. Salted fish? Although Yenjika felt a little complicated, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. In the end, half guessing and half confirming, she asked in one breath, The awakening of your supernatural ability also came from the jindan? You practiced the 9 words formula and the simplified physical invulnerability so quickly because of this? Was the person who attacked you a cultivator? Yes, when I was suppressed to the limit by Yi Yaoting and couldn't make up for it, the surface of the jindan disintegrated and let the ice force come out with the brutal blizzard. I let the fire force stay in my body and merge with my body. That was the first awakening. You know the 9 words formula. It's one of the core of Longhu Immortal's practice. As long as there was some charm, I could directly master it with the help of the jindan. That person should be a descendant of Longhu Immortal. Since he formed the jindan, his spirit could initially interfere with reality. Lu Qing panted and frankly told her about the influence the jindan had on him. Before Yenjika asked again, he continued intermittently. But most of the time, I tried not to rely on the jindan. After all, it's just an external object. If I really want to improve, I can only rely on myself. I can only temper my body step by step and polish my will. Almost all the battles, as long as it's not a life or death battle, as long as I can still control myself. I try to fight according to what I have learned, prejudgment and improvisation. He spoke slowly, focusing on his own efforts in martial arts and occasionally mixing in some information about the Jindan to weaken the negative effects with words. This wasn't because he was scheming, but because he valued it too much and was afraid of losing it. Yenjika listened in a daze. For some reason, she felt that the Chung in front of her was a stranger. This was a Chung that she had never seen before. This was a Chung that she couldn't even imagine in the past. He hid it so well. At this moment, Lu Cheng's image in her heart changed slightly. Cracks appeared in the martial artist that she had always thought to be extremely talented. I've wanted to tell you since a long time ago, but I didn't have the confidence to do so. I wanted to wait until I reached the inhuman stage before telling you. That way, even if I don't have the Jindan, I can still take care of our future. But after I advanced, other than practicing Lament of the Ice Queen using the Jindan, I haven't used it at all. Well, that includes mastering Ice Mirror and mastering All-Seeing God. So I was thinking that I should wait until the 9 words formula is complete before telling you, said Lu Cheng as he pondered. He didn't hide his emotions at different stages. Why wait until the 9 words formula is complete? Asked Yenjika, puzzled. Aren't you born with a deficiency? Cultivation and martial arts have different beginnings. Who knows, there might be a way to make up for your problem. I didn't tell you before because I was afraid that if the hope was too high, the disappointment would be greater, answered Lu Cheng seriously. Yenjika pursed her lips and looked at Lu Cheng with a complicated gaze. Thousands of thoughts ran through her mind. In the end, she only cursed under her breath. You idiot! After saying those words, her mind broke free from the shock brought by the secret. She began to recall the past and examine her own emotions. Initially, she had a good impression of Chung because of his outstanding martial arts talent. It made her, who had no hope of walking down this path, want to substitute for him. But there was that tiny bit of liking. It was because I had a good chat with him. It was because he shared with me bits and pieces of the Warrior Sage Challenge tournament, making me feel like I was walking down the path of glory step by step. It was because of his impromptu performance. It was because of his rapid transformation from unfamiliar to familiar. As for her true liking, it was because of his hard work, his silly actions, his high regard for her, the beauty of mutual love, his persistence, his hard work, his willpower, and his values that were compatible with her. Among all these, the shadow of Jindan became fainter and fainter. Cool. Seeing that his little fairy was silent for a long time after scolding, Lu Cheng worriedly called her. Yenjika frowned slightly and waved her hand. She scolded him in a delicate voice. Don't interrupt. I'm thinking about something. Lu Cheng immediately shut up and waited anxiously, unable to move. After a few minutes, Yenjika puffed up her cheeks and stared at him. Who said you don't have martial arts talent? Impromptu combat talent is also martial arts talent. Jindan can't help you with this. Yes. Lu Cheng was relieved to hear this and hurried to agree. Yenjika's eyes turned up and her dimples shone. I used to fantasize about adventures, thinking that I could make up for my congenital deficiency and become a heroine. You got Jindan and became a master step by step from an ordinary person with no cultivation talent. You met my expectations perfectly. Hey, I'm so jealous of you. Now that she said it, he felt more immersive than before. Isn't a girl with congenital deficiency the same as a boy with average cultivation talent? What heavenly son of the age? What once in 20 years? What dazzling brilliance? I can only look up to you. Speaking of this, the girl smiled sweetly. Didn't I say last time that the gap between us was getting bigger? Now it's gone. Are you disappointed? She seemed to have let go of a small knot in her heart. That's great. Lu Cheng could hear the emotional changes in Yenjika's voice. He could feel her heartfelt voice and was completely relieved. He felt that the shadow that had been entrenched in his heart for several years had disappeared. He felt refreshed and his mind was lively. There was no more stagnation. Great your head. Yenjika scolded with a smile. Then she asked with concern. Did you tell Coach Sure about this? I'm afraid he'll be disappointed in you if you keep hiding it from him. He found out long ago. Lu Cheng answered embarrassedly. He's indeed a mighty one with physical invulnerability. Yenjika lowered her head shamefully. Chung and I are sleeping in the same bed. Why didn't he find out earlier and give him a fright? Not wanting to dwell on this topic, she changed the topic. Your phone was damaged in the explosion. I saved your number and got a new one for you. Well, I haven't told Uncle and Auntie about this yet. I'm afraid they'll be shocked. Don't worry, the military has sent people to protect them secretly. These 2 days, I logged into your QQ and WeChat and told your cousins to tell them that your injuries aren't serious and that you just need to rest. Speaking of this, Yenjika suddenly remembered something. Her dimples deepened instantly, and her eyes were overflowing with obvious laughter. Priest, hipster, and Chihuahua are good at coming up with nicknames. When Chung was seriously injured and unconscious, she didn't have the mood to think about it. Words about it would only cause grief. The more she thought about it, the funnier it was. What's wrong? Lu Qing noticed his wife's strange behavior and asked in confusion. It was right not to tell Dad and Mom. With such injuries, they would be scared to death. Besides, they were old and not martial artists. If they weren't careful, the whole family would be hospitalized. It wasn't like Xiaoshan had never experienced something like this. There was once a child who was in a car accident. His grandfather panicked and had a cerebral hemorrhage. Nothing. Yenjika pursed her lips and shook her head. I was just thinking about the speculations about your injury. Some said that you improved too quickly, and your foundation was unstable. Some said that after you defeated Ji Tong, you went to dozens of outsides and played all night with drugs while you were mentally and physically exhausted. That's why you had problems. That's too much nonsense. Lu Qing said, annoyed and amused at the same time. They also said that you tried to awaken your supernatural ability for the 3rd time, but failed miserably. That's a good reason. Yenjika was about to continue when Geezer Shi, Dragon King, Ji Jianzhang, and the others rushed over and filled the single ward. Lu Qing repeated what he had said before in a concise and comprehensive manner, emphasizing the enemy's identity as a cultivator. Jindan? You got a Jindan? Geezer Shi asked, his eyes wide open. Jindan was a highly condensed essence, chi, spirit, and will. It couldn't be kept for long. Once its master died, it would either explode out of control or slowly dissipate in a dozen days. Lu Qing was even more surprised and said blankly, Master, didn't I tell you before? I thought it was a natal artifact. Geezer Shi's voice trailed off as he felt that he had misunderstood something in the past. Before he could finish, he noticed that Ning Zitong, Ji Jianzhang, and the others were looking at him, as if they wanted to laugh. Among them, Dragon King's eyes were clearly saying, How did you survive in the war-torn zones? Chapter 567. Cough, cough. So, Gu Hui is a cultivator here to steal Longhu Immortal's Jindan? Geezer Shi ignored the gazes of the others and changed the topic. Lu Qing was lying on the bed. He couldn't even tilt his neck, let alone turn his body. He couldn't even see the physical invulnerability experts around him. Due to his poor physical condition, the sensing range of the ice mirror was reduced to half a foot around him. Similarly, it couldn't reflect the reactions of the mighty ones. He could only answer honestly. That's my judgment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tried to kill him without any grievances beside him. Yenjika looked around the ward, taking in the expressions of her grandparents, Dragon King, Empress Luo, and the others. Seeing that they didn't care about Cheng's fortuitous encounter with the Jindan, and were only surprised and puzzled, she calmed down and heaved a sigh of relief. She heard that when the Dragon King was in a life-and-death situation, he too had a fortuitous encounter that allowed him to survive and surpass the warrior sage. Physical invulnerability experts should have the same attitude towards such matters. They only looked at the realm, standard, temperament, and potential. As for how it came about, it didn't matter. Gu Hui is the tutor of Princess Irina of the Samano royal family. Maybe there's another reason? Do Ning suggested calmly. Irina's tutor? Before Lu Qing could answer, Yenjika was stunned at first. Then realization dawned on her. She looked at her grandpa and said, when she said it smells good, she must be referring to the feeling of the Jindan. Lu Qing also came to a realization. He answered in a hoarse voice. Yes. Seeing that Grandpa and Grandma were confused, Yenjika briefly told them about how Princess Irina hooked up with Lu Cheng. When she asked, she wasn't too sure. Her main purpose was to test me. She didn't mean any harm. Otherwise, I would have been alerted. Lu Cheng recalled the scene and described it truthfully. During that security mission, Irina sensed that you had the jindan or the smell of a cultivator. After returning, she casually mentioned it to Gu Hui, so he sneaked in, avoided the surveillance, and planned to kill you and steal your treasure? Geezer sure explained the whole story energetically. That's about right. Ji Jianzhong nodded in agreement after analyzing the information from other sources. Dragon King, Chen Qitao paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. In a deep voice, he ordered the military personnel. You guys contact the government and investigate Gu Hui's experience in the country. Focus on finding out who his master is, whether he has any fellow disciples, whether he has any close friends, and whether these friends are cultivators. As for his experience of studying in Europe, I'll deal with it after I make a trip to the Samano royal family. You're going to Samano? Geezer sure blurted out. Chen Qitao nodded slightly. Let's go talk to that princess face to face. There was a brief silence in the ward. For this kind of thing, it's better for me, the master, to step in. Geezer sure broke the silence and took the initiative to suggest. After all, the Samano royal family was being suppressed by an old monster. The Dragon King glanced at him and asked a simple question. Can you beat me now? Geezer sure choked and coughed after a long while. Back then, without waiting for him to finish his thoughts, Chen Qitao added calmly. He's also a member of Longhu now. Others may be afraid of the vampire emperor, but I'm not. Then we'll go and hold the fort, said Ji Jianzhong with a chuckle. Old drunkard, you'll stay in Linfu and watch over the big picture. We don't know if there are other cultivators behind Gu Hui. Stay in Linfu and watch over the big picture? Geezer Ji is indeed a cultured person. Sure, Jiang Wo had forgotten about the Dragon King's disrespect just now. He nodded and said, since all of you have said so, I'll reluctantly stay in the center. Seeing that the physical invulnerability experts had finished their discussion, the military personnel interrupted meekly. When we were searching for the 9 words formula, we found that several related items had appeared in Europe in the past 100 or 200 years. We have reason to suspect that Gu Hui obtained the cultivator's legacy after leaving the country. Check within the country as well. Make sure nothing goes wrong, emphasized Ning Zitong. Yes, answered the military personnel, crossing his legs. At this moment, Geezer sure brought the topic back to the beginning. He looked at Lu Cheng with great interest. He looked at Lu Cheng and asked, Brat, the jindan is in your body? This thing is quite amazing. As a top-notch physical invulnerability expert, I didn't notice it at all. Lu Cheng frowned and felt a stinging pain. He smiled bitterly. I don't know where it went. I can't sense it. When he woke up and used self-reflection in the state of all-seeing God, he realized that his lower abdomen was severely injured. The starry sky was gone, and there was nothing wrong with its original position. Before Geezer sure and the rest could ask, Lu Cheng thought for a while and added, But I feel that it's still in my body. It seems to have spread to every part of my body. It was a pity that his body was weak and he couldn't use force concentration or other methods to find out what was wrong. Could it have completely merged into your body? Sure, Yuejian couldn't hide her curiosity and guessed. Not likely. There's still a barrier. Lu Cheng sensed self-reflection seriously. Geezer sure clicked his tongue. Come, let me take a look for you. He walked to the side of the bed, extended his right hand, and pressed on the part of his disciple that wasn't covered by bandages. He gathered his spirit and connected both sides. Lu Cheng felt a strong and cold storm enter his body. His spirit could only shrink into a corner and shiver. A few minutes later, Geezer sure retracted his hand and muttered in confusion. Strange, very strange. What's strange? Ning Zitong asked curiously. When I examine it carefully, I can indeed detect a subtle abnormality, but I can't put my finger on it. It's like an old man's hallucination. Strange, strange. Geezer sure shook his head continuously. Before he could finish his sentence, Dragon King had already moved closer. Without saying anything, he pressed his hand on Lu Cheng. In an instant, Lu Cheng felt as though he was in the middle of a hot summer day. His feet were burning, his pores were blocked, and his head was so hot that it made him dizzy. Strange. Chen Qitao frowned slightly and stepped back. Ning Zitong darted in, and mimicked the two in front of her. Ji Jianzhang Do Ning, and Shi Yuejian lined up behind her. He just woke up. His body is still weak. Yanzhika saw this and quickly stopped them, like a chicken spreading its wings to protect a chick. This is a checkup. It won't affect his body. Ning Zitong grinned. After a while, the few physical invulnerability experts looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. Brat, when you can get out of bed and move around, go to the military base once a month and cooperate with them to do some experiments. This may help you recover faster and eliminate the hidden dangers. In the end, Geezer sure made the final decision. Yes, master. Lu Cheng knew that he was severely injured this time, and was afraid that there would be residual problems. The abnormality of the Jindan made him even more uncertain. Let's go out. There are still many things to do. Ning Zitong suggested. Let's not disturb little brother Lu's rest. Dragon King walked 2 steps with his hands behind his back and suddenly said, Lu Cheng, you may have residual effects this time. Be mentally prepared. After that, he pushed the door open and left without further explanation. Lu Cheng was stunned. He felt that the faint worry in his heart seemed to have become a reality. Residual effects? How serious would the residual effects be? Would his body be able to recover to its best condition? Thoughts flashed through his mind. He stared at the ceiling and fell into silence. After leaving the ward, Shi Yuejian, who had always been protective of Lu Cheng, frowned and said, Dragon King, we can talk about the residual effects when his injuries are more or less healed. What if there wasn't any? Talking about it in advance would only make Lu Cheng carry a heavy burden for a while. Chen Qitao looked straight ahead and replied slowly and majestically, Only those who can face it head-on are true martial artists. Geezer Shi and Do Ning opened their mouths but said nothing in the end. In the ward, Yanzhika rubbed her face and put away her worry. She put on a beautiful and sweet smile and walked to Lu Cheng. What are you afraid of? It's just a possibility. Besides, technology is advancing. Martial arts are advancing. As long as you're alive, there's hope and possibility. Lu Cheng naturally said the latter half of the sentence. That's right. The two of them looked at each other and smiled in tacit understanding. When Yanzhika went to wash the towel, Lu Cheng took a deep breath and suppressed the anxiety and worry in his heart. He controlled his body with the state of self-reflection and accelerated the healing process. With his current mental state, he became exhausted in a few minutes. But looking at the slender figure busy wiping his sweat, he gritted his teeth and held on for twice as long. Currently, all the functions of his body are still dormant. He didn't know what would happen after the recovery. With these thoughts in mind, Lu Cheng fell into a deep sleep. Europe, John Weilberg. King Ed was dealing with government affairs in his study when he suddenly saw an attendant enter with a thick file. Your Majesty, the Chinese embassy has submitted a letter and a lot of documents accusing Princess Irina's tutor, Gu Hui, of assassinating their heavenly son of the era, Lu Cheng, said the attendant solemnly. Ed stopped what he was doing and pondered for a few seconds. Let me see. The attendant quickly took out the letter and documents and played a video. Although the evidence didn't form a chain, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that it was Gu Hui. I've always said that Gu Hui is too mysterious and shouldn't be too close to the royal family. But Irina never listened. The king tapped the crocodile skin of his notepad with his right index finger, looking displeased. Just then, another attendant entered and reported with an unusually solemn expression. Your Majesty, the Dragon King of China, Chen Qitao, has submitted a letter requesting an audience with Princess Irina. He paused for a moment and continued. He says he's outside the ancient castle. What? For a moment Ed was both shocked and angry. He stood up from his seat. Where's the formal etiquette? This barbarian. The Samano royal family has an emperor. Pacing back and forth, Ed recalled the documents and Chen Qitao's usual reputation. He rubbed his brows and said, Let Irina meet him. He's inside the ancient castle. Chapter 568. Gu tried to assassinate Lu Cheng? In the sunny garden, the black-haired, red-eyed Irina couldn't help but ask halfway through the servant's report. When Gu Cheng left, he was looking forward to it but not murderous. Did he really hide it so well that he even disguised his emotions? The servant answered honestly, based on the current situation, that is indeed the case. What's the result? Irina shook her head to hide her disappointment and asked for more details. Lu Cheng was severely injured but he killed Gu Cheng. The servant's lips trembled as he answered. What? Irina cried out in shock, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. He could barely accept the fact that Gu Rui tried to assassinate Lu Cheng. After all, Gu Rui had always been unpredictable. However, he would never believe that Gu Rui had failed the assassination and died in Lu Cheng's hands. Gu Cheng's methods were mysterious and much stronger than her. He was a mighty one at the level of a prince. At least from his appearance, he would have no problem dealing with Lu Cheng who had yet to mature. Even if there were other factors, he should have been able to escape easily. How could he die just like that? Dead. The servant's body tensed up. He deliberated over his words and said, Gu Cheng is indeed dead. His head was blown off by Lu Cheng. He wanted to say that Lu Cheng smashed Gu Cheng's head with a single whip, but he couldn't remember the translated Chinese term for kung fu in his haste. Impossible, impossible. Irina shook her head slowly. Her eyes were blank. Gu Cheng was so mysterious and had so many secrets. How could he die just like that? In that instant, she recalled seeing Lu Cheng at the banquet in Huacheng. He was indeed extraordinary, and had the temperament of a mighty one. But there was still a huge gap between him and Gu Cheng. Was he really that strong? For the first time, Irina doubted her own judgment. She felt that the black-haired, black-eyed, calm, and gentle young man was a monster in human skin. No, he was scarier than a monster. The servant looked up. Seeing that the princess had calmed down, he mustered up his courage and said, The Dragon King of China wants to see you. He is already waiting in the Black Rose Hall. After pausing for a moment he added, That's right. His Majesty has agreed. Dragon King? Irina's face turned pale and her body shook. After a long time, she squeezed out a smile and said, Okay, I'll go change. Chen Qitao sat on the sofa in the dark hall with exquisite reliefs and roses. His eyes were half closed, as if he was resting. The radiance around him was dim, and the airflow was heavy. The ferocious intent had almost turned into clouds. They crossed the void and attacked the lake in his heart. Humph, that's all there is to an old monster. The Dragon King muttered to himself. He burned his spirit to resist the pressure that came from afar. At this moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Princess Irina who had just walked into the Black Rose Hall. She was wearing a fiery red fishtail dress that exposed her back. Her waist was swaying, and her curves were stunning. She was beautiful and generous, but her uneven breathing and slightly trembling body betrayed her true feelings. I was deeply regretful that I wasn't able to meet the Dragon King when I visited Flower City in July. I didn't expect that I would be able to make up for it so quickly. Irina gracefully bowed. Chen Qitao nodded in response and spoke straightforwardly. Did you tell Gu Hui about Lu Cheng? There was no small talk, no nonsense, and he went straight to the heart of the matter. After listening to the translator, Irina walked gracefully to the sofa opposite him and sat down. She smiled bitterly and replied, Yes, I felt that Lu's scent was very similar to Ge's. After returning to John Weilberg, I mentioned it to him. I don't know the details. Irina thought for a moment and continued frankly. Gu is very mysterious. I've always wanted to find out more about him, but I couldn't find a chance. It's inevitable that I would be curious when I meet someone who feels like him. I tried to probe Lu Cheng, hoping to get some information from him so that I could learn more about Ge's secret. In the end, he didn't seem to know anything. Chen Qitao nodded slightly, expressing his acknowledgement of her answer. Irina's words matched Lu Cheng's description perfectly. She didn't mean any harm back then. She was purely probing. How do you know Gu Hui? After the translator passed the message, Irina pondered for a few seconds and said, I met him at a party from a friend. Gu helped the Byron Group's chairman's child and had a good relationship with their family. He often attended various gatherings. I felt that he was very mysterious and powerful. He could always analyze and explain problems from an unimaginable angle, especially in terms of combat, superpowers, and so on. Hence, I invited him to be my home tutor. Oh right, he's also good at something called feng shui. He has helped several tycoons change the architectural layout. Feng shui? The Dragon King maintained his poker face and confirmed in his mind. At the level of physical invulnerability, one could communicate with heaven and earth, feel the magnetic field in nature, understand what was harmful and what was beneficial, and make targeted changes. One of the advantages of home ground was to complete the layout. Although it wasn't a formation in myths and legends, there were still many strange formations that could strengthen oneself and weaken the enemy. From another perspective, this was feng shui. Of course, before reaching physical invulnerability, one could only grasp it based on the conclusions of their ancestors. Most of the fortune tellers among the common folk were liars, copying cats and drawing tigers. Occasionally, they would get lucky. The fact that Gu Hui could gain the recognition of so many tycoons showed that he was indeed capable in this aspect. It also indirectly proved that he had certain characteristics of physical invulnerability that he had obtained earlier due to different training systems. This coincided with the combat strength he had displayed, and the traces of destruction at the scene. Chen Qitao asked a few more questions in detail. Seeing that Irina really didn't have a deep understanding of Gu Hui, he bent his right hand, tapped the sofa armrest and said, "Give me all of Gu Hui's personal belongings." Irina heaved a sigh of relief. She hurriedly ordered the maids to tidy up Gu Hui's belongings. In the end, she even went to check it herself. When she returned, she said, "Gu Hui likes to collect things. Many of them are still here. This means that he didn't intend to assassinate you in the beginning, and even planned to return." According to Irina, someone with a similar smell could also be a cultivator who had formed the golden core. At first, Gu Hui might have just wanted to make a friend and have a chat partner. When he found out that they were left behind by Longhu Immortal, he changed his mind. Chen Qitao's thoughts raced. He slowly got up and walked out of the door. The maids and attendants followed behind with 2 suitcases in tow. At this moment, Irina gritted her teeth and said, "There's one more thing." She took off the pendant around her neck and passed it to the Dragon King. The confrontation character glowed, clear and delicate. Chen Qitao glanced at it, took it and said in a deep voice, "If there's no problem, I'll get someone to return it to you. Am I the Dragon King, the kind of person who covets a little girl's belongings?" In Lu Cheng's ward, the few physical invulnerability experts gathered again. Gu Hui's father passed away when he was young. He didn't have any special experiences in the country. His relatives and friends weren't cultivators. Moreover, after he left the country for a year, his relationship with everyone became distant. When his mother passed away, he completely stopped contacting anyone. The military personnel in charge of one of the leads reported. The intelligence personnel in charge of tracking the European side added. Following the Byron Group's lead, we found that Gu Hui obtained the importation of cultivation in the second half of his first year. He often took care of a lonely old man in Chinatown. The period when he appeared miraculously matched the time when the lonely old man was nearing the end of his life. We're currently tracing the experience of this old man to see if there are any other cultivators. Hearing this information, Lu Qing couldn't help but sigh. Gu Hui's experience was the standard template of a protagonist. If it were written in a novel, it would be something like The Taoist in Europe, The Princess's Personal Tutor, or The Last Cultivator on Earth. Sigh. Wouldn't it be better for everyone to sit down and have a chat? Why must we fight to the death? At my level, the use of the Jindan is at its lowest. Instead, I'm more worried about it having problems and remaining hidden dangers. I'll cooperate with you to extract the Jindan, and you'll exchange the importation of cultivation and the complete set of 9 words formula with me. Isn't that a win-win situation? Unfortunately, to a certain extent, the law of the dark forest is quite realistic. Looks like this is an isolated incident, Ji Jianzhong concluded. No need to make a big fuss about it. Ning Zitong agreed. Chen Qitao walked to Lu Cheng's bedside and took out the pendant. This is the confrontation formula. When practiced internally, it can help you calm down and speed up recovery. It's suitable for your current situation. Remember to return it to the military after you've mastered it. As soon as the Dragon King finished speaking, Geyser added, follow Gu Hui's lead. Cough, the formation formula and the decueing formula shouldn't be a problem. We're currently summarizing the impartation of cultivation from the things Gu Hui missed. You don't have to worry about these things. Yes. Lu Qing couldn't nod, and could only reply. Yan Zhika hurriedly took the amulet, and displayed the confrontation character in front of Lu Cheng's eyes as if their minds were connected. Lu Cheng studied it carefully and secretly sketched out the character. He wanted to use it as usual to guide the Jindan, and master it directly after he had a slight understanding of the charm. However, this time, no matter how he visualized, the Jindan seemed to be in a deep sleep and didn't respond. Could it be because he didn't make the hand seals or emit the ancient sounds? Lu Cheng shook his head at his wife, indicating that he wouldn't be able to master it in a short time. He still needed a few more days before he could move his hands. No one expected a heavily injured person to master the confrontation formula on the spot. The few physical invulnerability experts left quickly, leaving the couple alone. Seeing that Lu Cheng's injuries were stable, Yan Kai and Ji Mingyu didn't stay any longer and returned to Xiushan to do their own things. The Jindan didn't activate? Yan Zhika put away the amulet and asked with a guess. Yeah. It might have something to do with the hand seals and ancient sounds. Lu Qing answered with uncertainty. After chatting for a while, Lu Qing started to control his body and heal his injuries internally. Yan Zhika sat beside him on the bed and took out her phone. She planned to browse the news first before reading and studying. Not long after she opened Weibo, she saw a trending news. Lu Qing hasn't shown up yet. His injuries might be more serious than we thought. I suspect that he failed his third supernatural ability awakening. This failure might prevent him from returning to his peak in 2 to 3 years. It might even affect his potential for further improvement. Chapter 569. Yenjika's breathing slowed down as she continued to read. As we all know, experts who have reached the realm of all-seeing God have extremely powerful recovery abilities. For an ordinary martial artist that would require 10 to 20 days to recover from an injury, they would be able to bounce around in 2 to 3 days. For a serious problem that would require at least half a year to recover from, they would be able to control it in 3 to 5 days. At most, they would be as good as new after a month or so. However, Lu Qing hasn't shown himself since the start of his injury. You can imagine the severity of the problem. Is it because he doesn't want to show up? Why wouldn't he accept a short interview to dispel all suspicions? There's only one answer. Until now, he still can't get out of bed. Once he shows up, the bad situation will be known to everyone. This wasn't a Weibo post by a famous verified account or a news reporter, but a guess by an ordinary user named Tiger Guan. It had become a hot topic because too many people had reposted and discussed it. Yenjika bit her lip, opened the comments, and skimmed through a few. Yeah, it's been a week. Neither Lu Cheng nor the Longhu Club gave a detailed response. It's suspicious. To be honest, I'm guessing that Lu Cheng is dead. There are many examples of failed supernatural ability awakenings. None of them are good. The girl's thumb swiped quickly and finally, she flicked her wrist and closed the app impatiently. She looked straight ahead, deep and mysterious. What's wrong? With Lu Cheng's current mental state, he couldn't maintain self-reflection for too long. When he paused, he noticed that his little fairy was in a daze. Yenjika pressed the corner of her eyes, revealing her dimples. She leaned over and smiled sweetly. Talker is asking about your injuries. I'm thinking about how to answer. Little Ming? There's no need to be so formal between us. Just answer, I won't die. Lu Qing chuckled. Alright, you guys have a weird way of interacting. Yenjika's smile didn't falter. She picked up Lu Cheng's phone, unlocked the screen and gave her answer. The other party replied quickly. Wow, it's obvious that it's you and not a substitute. I knew that a scourge like you wouldn't die so easily. Yen Zhika repeated it and asked Lu Qing with a smile. What do you say this time? You're the scourge. I'm the lucky one. Lu Qing felt like a boss dictating to his secretary. Well, there was no need to be honest about this. Otherwise, when his injuries were healed, he would be forced to sleep on the sofa. After a few lines of crosstalk with Talker, his phone suddenly vibrated. It was a call from his mother, Qi Fong. After being delayed for a week, Qi Fong, who had heard about the discussions online from her neighbors, relatives and friends, finally couldn't help but call. Your mother. Yenjika lowered her voice instinctively. Put it on speaker and put it next to my mouth. Lu Qing made up his mind. Yenjika nodded slightly and chose to accept the call, changing the mode. Hello Chung. Qi Fong's voice trembled slightly. Mom, shouldn't you be at work at this time? Lu Qing pretended to be surprised. Can't I call you at work? Qi Fong was obviously relieved. What's wrong with you? Is your injury serious? It's not serious at all. Just something went wrong with my martial arts practice and I need to rest in bed. Lu Qing lied so that his mother wouldn't worry. You need to rest in bed and you're not serious? Qi Fong thought for a while and said, You're not familiar with that place called Linfu and no one to take care of you. Do you want me to come over? Mom, it's okay. The club has hired professional caregivers who can do most of the things. Besides, Ku is there too. She'll take care of me. Lu Qing answered honestly. Ku is there too? Qi Fong was surprised. Her grandpa and grandma are both from the martial arts circle. She heard about my injury immediately and flew over before I could stop her. She's been taking care of me for almost a week now. Lu Qing replied, trying to embellish his story. Ku is such a good girl. You have to cherish her. She's a lady from a respectable family and is usually served by others. Now she's busy taking care of you. It's not easy. Qi Fong said with a smile. Because it was on speaker, Yenjika heard everything clearly. She lowered her head and blushed, but the corners of her mouth were rising higher and higher. After chatting for a while, Qi Fong finally hung up the phone. Before Lu Qing could say anything, Yenjika said in a coquettish tone. Auntie, what respectable lady. What respectable life. Who would talk about that nowadays? My mom has always been learning from TV series. Lu Qing said to his mother behind her back. And call her mom. Yenjika glared at him and gritted her teeth. She glanced at Lu Qing's forehead and quickly became gentle. She picked up the towel and said, Look at you. You're sweating after saying a few words. After that, she pursed her lips and said, I'll go to America when you can get out of bed. Anyway, it's okay to take 2 weeks off. She seemed to be afraid that Lu Qing would urge her, so she emphasized, I can study by myself. I can ask my classmates to scan the lecture notes for me. I'll definitely be able to catch up. Lu Qing looked at her with a smile and gave a simple reply, Okay. Yenjika was stunned at first, but soon smiled gently. After carefully wiping him, she walked slowly to the attached bathroom. She turned on the tap and washed the towel. The smile on her face gradually disappeared, and her expression became gloomy and worried. She wrung the towel dry, took a deep breath, and returned to the bedside with a smile. Wanhua Hotel Buffet Restaurant. Only Tuzheng was left in the Longhu Club. The members of the Longhu Club were sitting in groups of 2s and 3s with plates in their hands. They were talking about how there was only one more round before the double elimination tournament would determine the top 16. They were also talking about the gossip about the Battle of the Kings during this period of time. Of course, they couldn't avoid the popular Lu Qing incident on the internet. Leader 2, do you think Lu Qing will really need 2 to 3 years to recover to his peak, and will have a hard time reaching physical invulnerability in the future? Sun Jianlin asked in a low voice. He picked up a piece of raw salmon, rolled it in the soy sauce with wasabi, and put it into his mouth. Do you really believe in the internet? It's not like you didn't see the actual situation. Lu Qing didn't fail his third supernatural ability awakening. Tuzheng replied with a smile. As the local mighty one of the Longhu Club, they received the news the moment Lu Qing got into trouble. They reported it to Empress Luo as they completed the alert and transferred the injured. But Leader 2, you know how serious and critical Lu Qing's condition was at that time. To put it bluntly, I had a question mark in my heart whether he could survive. With this kind of injury, even if he could see himself and heal it slightly, it would still be extremely difficult for him to recover to his original state. Yu Wangyuan sighed and explained, "We martial artists are not gods. No matter how inhuman we are still mortal." Regarding this matter, Tu Zheng would definitely be lying to himself if he said that he was not secretly delighted. However, as a martial artist, seeing such a brilliant genius fall into such a state where his future was unpredictable, his heart was filled with sadness. Life is unpredictable. Who knows, it might be my turn one day. Sai, let's not talk about it anymore. Let's hope Lu Qing can get better. We have trained hard and finally reached this stage. It wasn't easy for anyone. No one wants to face such a situation. Tu Zheng sighed. The sushi between his chopsticks was shaking, but he didn't let it fall. It was because of this matter that he was more eager to break through. Only by attaining physical invulnerability would he be able to go anywhere in the world. Jia Lu put down her chopsticks and supported her chin with one hand. Generally speaking, a rising star would have to go through 3 calamities and 9 tribulations to achieve positive results. Lu Qing should be in such a situation now. 3 calamities and 9 tribulations? Have you been reading too many novels? Lu Xiaofei sneered. Does Lu Qing need to find Peng Liyun to get struck by lightning? Yu Wangyuan asked, amused. Lightning tribulations are just a myth in novels. However, human tribulations are more common. Jia Lu replied as if she was an observer. Human tribulations. Tu Zheng and the rest frowned as they chewed on these 2 words. In Lu Cheng's fan forum, everyone was discussing his injury intensely. If it wasn't serious, he could just update his Weibo and show his face to dispel the rumors. A plumber eating mushrooms reasoned. Just show your face when others ask you to? Just update your Weibo when others ask you to? How embarrassing. Brahmin said stubbornly. While everyone was busy talking, Yin Xiaoling jumped out and said, "Clenching fist is shining expression. Senior sister replied to my message. She said that Lu Qing didn't fail to awaken his supernatural ability." I believe her. Phew. The fans heaved a sigh of relief while the onlookers were slightly disappointed. Then what's the reason? Unparalleled Dragon King asked curiously. Yin Xiaoling was stunned. I forgot to ask. You unreliable person. Nie Qiqi and the rest scolded in disappointment. That afternoon, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and An Chaoyang arrived at the hospital. After passing through the interception, they met Lu Qing. When they saw that Lu Qing couldn't even move his hands and feet, let alone play with his phone, they heaved a sigh of relief. Beside them, Yin Zheka was having a hard time trying to hold back her laughter. Unlike the other visitors, after they were done caring about Lu Cheng's injury, they started to discuss the life and death battle with Lu Qing. They discussed the timing, the choice of environment, and the countermeasures. Among them, An Chaoyang felt that he should have directly exerted force on his feet to break the steel rope, and let the elevator fall to the bottom to avoid a direct confrontation. Lu Qing, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Yin Zheka all commented that he was half-hearted at the crucial moment of life and death. If he had taken the time to break the steel rope, the one who fell to the bottom would most likely be a corpse. After they returned, the Battle of the Kings also came to an end. In the end, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, Tu Zheng, Ji Ren and the others successfully entered the main competition. As for the senior Fa Zhen, he once again failed. 11 days later, in the ward, with Yin Zheka's help, Lu Qing stood up shakily and started to walk slowly. After walking half around, the girl let go of him and watched him move step by step. Although it was strenuous, his face was full of smiles. The recovery ability of the all-seeing God, Inhuman, was so strong. You can go out and show your face now so that everyone doesn't have to worry and guess, said Yin Zheka with a faint smile. Wait, I'll go to the toilet first. Phew, I can finally go to the toilet myself. Lu Qing walked towards the toilet like a penguin. Just as he reached the door and was about to enter, he suddenly felt a strange chill coming from the depths of his body and instantly froze both his legs. He tried to pull but couldn't move his right leg. It wasn't until 10 seconds later that he felt better and regained control of his leg. Chapter 570. What's wrong? Although this was a luxurious single ward, the actual area was not too big. For Yenjuka, who was at the peak of 9th pin, the distance between them was only a matter of one step. When she saw Lu Cheng was stunned, she felt something was wrong. She slid forward to support her husband and asked with concern. Lu Cheng exhaled slowly and organized his thoughts. He didn't try to hide it and said with a bitter smile, "It's probably the after-effects." He described the uncontrollable situation in detail. In the end, he speculated, "Maybe it's because I overexerted myself and my jindan started to mutate under the dual effects of self-exertion and external attacks. Hence, it started to combine with my jindan. But in fact, it's an external object. The two contradict each other and reject each other, causing backlash. Just now it was cold, but later it might be high temperature." Previously, when he was bedridden and regained his ability to walk with Ku's help, this situation didn't appear. Today, when he walked a little more and exercised more, it suddenly appeared. Does this mean that the after-effects depend on the body's energy consumption? If so, and I can't completely solve it, doesn't that mean I won't be able to participate in battles in the future? In the fierce battle of fists and feet, the freezing or burning that lasted more than 10 seconds only meant the word failure. Is the after-effects of becoming a disabled martial artist without actual combat ability? Thoughts flashed through Lu Cheng's mind, making him feel heavier and heavier. There's no such thing as jindan nowadays. Yenjuka subconsciously retorted. But when she thought of her own situation, she fell silent. This was still a blind spot in modern medicine. Congenital deficiency was one of the blind spots. As her thoughts raced through her mind, the girl looked up and added after some deliberation, "That's right. If the after-effects of high temperature and relapses, it might be like what you said." But she pursed her lips and said, "But this is good. When you get the 9 words formula and the complete cultivation manual, you can try to guide the jindan and slowly digest it. Maybe this will be your opportunity to break through to physical invulnerability." Influenced by his little fairy's optimism, Lu Cheng's heavy heart eased a lot. He nodded thoughtfully and said, "I don't necessarily need to get the 9 words formula. When my body recovers and I can do force concentration, I might be able to digest the jindan bit by bit." He tried to look confident. Well, the worst-case scenario would be that he would not be able to participate in actual combat, and would have to retire from the martial arts circle. At least he would not be a cripple who had a hard time in daily life, and would not be a burden to Ku and his parents. "That's right." Yenjuka nodded like a chick pecking at grains. Then she thought of something and hurriedly reminded him. "Chung, call Coach Shi and the Dragon King now and tell them about the sequela. Ask them to arrange for you to go to the military base for examination and experiment. See if they can come up with another solution." "Well, there's no rush. What if it was just a coincidence? We'll talk about it after we confirm it." Lu Cheng's thoughts were running wild. He squeezed out a smile and said, "Furthermore, I'm currently in a very weak state. Once I get better, maybe the effects of the sequelae will become weaker and weaker. It won't be a burden anymore." There was definitely a possibility. Many ancient martial arts books recorded that some people suffered from a backlash during training. They would alternate between hot and cold for a quarter of an hour at noon and 2 in the afternoon. Although it was unbearable, it would not affect daily combat because there was a fixed time. At most, it would weaken one's strength and make one's chances of attaining physical invulnerability were slim. Furthermore, one would have to be more vigilant during that half an hour to avoid being attacked by one's enemies. If he could end up like that, it would be acceptable. Lu Cheng felt bitter. He said to Yenjuka, who agreed with him, "I'll go to the bathroom first." "Okay." Yenjuka followed him closely and stood at the door of the bathroom. She was waiting with half of her body to prevent any accidents such as fainting. The infectious and optimistic smile on her face faded little by little. She unconsciously bit her lip. With a splash, Lu Cheng pulled up his pants and turned on the tap. At this moment, he suddenly felt a hot current surging in his body. It was as if there was a fire burning his internal organs, muscles, tendons, and so on. Clenching his teeth tightly, beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on Lu Cheng's forehead. However, he endured it and did not make a sound. He felt like he would faint at any moment. 7 to 8 seconds later, the heat subsided. He glanced at Yenjuka, who was standing by the door. He cupped the water with both hands and washed the sweat off his face. He moved out as if nothing had happened. Yenjuka followed behind him. After taking 2 steps, Yenjuka's gaze froze. She realized that the back of Lu Cheng's hospital gown was soaked with sweat. So much sweat. The thought flashed through her mind. Suddenly she understood. She covered her mouth and tried her best not to speak. The light in her eyes swayed gently. She took a deep breath and caught up with him. Smiling like a flower, she said, "The more you walk, the steadier you are." "Of course. I'm an expert with all-seeing God." Lu Cheng replied with a smile. "You are indeed my Cheng." Yenjuka rolled her eyes and said, "I think we should inform Coach Shi quickly. He has been worried about you. The earlier he knows, the earlier he can make arrangements. Even if it's just a false alarm, it's better than letting him worry all the time. It's also better than delaying big problems." "That makes sense." Lu Cheng nodded. "I'll give him a call right away." "Okay." Yenjuka answered briskly. She secretly heaved a sigh of relief. A few days later, in a secret military base located deep in the mountains, wearing various monitoring devices, Lu Cheng did a set of slow zigzags and did 2 sets of Tai Chi moving stance training. Compared to when he just got out of bed, there were no obvious signs of weakness. However, in less than 10 minutes, he was frozen twice. The first time was on his left leg, and the second time was on the right side of his body. There was also a burning once. Other than his head, his entire body was in discomfort. He almost fell while jogging. Phew. Exhaling a turbid breath, Lu Cheng tried his best to keep a calm face. He walked back to Geezer Shi and Yenjuka. "How is it?" he asked the military personnel who was looking at the computer. "We're almost done with the data collection. Your cells and genes are in the process of being studied. Once they draw a map and build a model, we'll do a comparison and analysis. Through design experiments, we'll find the root of the problem. This will take about 2 weeks to a month," the military personnel said. "So slow." Geezer Shi interrupted. "Senior, you know that this kind of thing takes a long time." The military personnel said sheepishly. "Your old injury has been there for many years. It's still in the middle stage. I'll be satisfied if there's a result in a month," Lu Cheng added with a smile. The most likely situation was to come back for another test in a month, contribute a few more vials of blood, and then continue to wait. Seriously, isn't there a big technology explosion? The semi-illiterate Geezer Shi shook his head and muttered. "Brat, are you staying here, going to Huadu, or going home to rest for a while?" "Let's go home." Lu Cheng felt that his current condition was not suitable for meeting outsiders. "Send Ke to the airport." "Sure. Remember to inform the Dragon King." Geezer Shi coughed twice and walked away. "I'm going to do my research." Lu Cheng had told Yenjuka the story of being researched. When they heard this, they immediately shut their mouths in unison to prevent themselves from laughing out loud. Their mood improved significantly. After his master left, Lu Cheng took out the confrontation amulet and handed it to the military personnel. "Help me return this to the Dragon King." A week ago, he had grasped the basics of the confrontation formula. However, he still couldn't get the Jindan to respond. The main function of the confrontation formula was to suppress distracting thoughts, cleanse the body and mind, and form a whole. It was similar to the forwarding formula to suppress the mind and resist negative emotions. In fact, they were very different. It was like the difference between a piece of clothing that was clean of dirt and a piece of clothing that was clean of dirt. Under this premise, the mind and body would be free of distracting thoughts, and the body and mind would be able to trigger the mystery, allowing one to reach their peak condition and speed up the recovery of one's injuries. It was because he had mastered the confrontation formula that Lu Cheng was able to get out of bed earlier than expected. The effect was similar when used on others. However, if this other person was in a state of mental exhaustion or overdraft, once the tranquility was achieved, the fatigue would come in waves and be difficult to control. After returning the confrontation amulet, the couple took a taxi to the nearest military airport and flew back to Xing province. They stayed in Gaofun for a night before rushing to the departure hall for international flights. After checking in the luggage with the Empress Dowager, Yinjuka stood in front of Lu Cheng with a small black backpack on her back. She pursed her lips and said gently, "I saw a lot of rumors online about how you got injured. You might be harassed by reporters when you get home. If you feel annoyed, you can come to Connecticut. Treat it as a vacation and lie low for a while." Speaking up to this point, she outlined her dimples, patted her chest, and said in a light tone, "Big sister will take care of you. Okay." Lu Qing smiled and didn't reject her. Seeing that it was getting late, Yinjuka turned and walked to the entrance. Yen Kai and the Empress Dowager were already waiting there. After taking a few steps forward, the girl suddenly turned around and clenched her fists at Lu Qing. She smiled brightly and gave him an encouraging hand gesture. Lu Qing clenched his fist and pumped it hard, telling himself that everything wasn't that bad. Xiushan. Under the escort of the military personnel, Lu Qing took a taxi to the ground floor and took the elevator to his home. Qi Fang, who had been waiting after receiving the call, heaved a sigh of relief when she saw her son walking freely and looking fine. She wanted to greet the guests for dinner, but they disappeared as soon as they put down Lu Cheng's luggage. "Seriously, why didn't you ask them to help you carry your things on such a hot day?" Qi Fang casually nagged. It was the time of the summer when the tiger was running wild. "They have discipline." Lu Cheng smiled as he entered the house and plopped down on the sofa. "I'll feel at home. As for the luggage, I'll pack it later. Mom won't be able to control herself and help me." He took out his phone and replied to Yenjuka's message. Then he browsed Weibo and saw that the news about his injury was getting worse. Some said that he was attacked, some said that he was jealous, some said that he was poisoned by his teammates, and some said that he was disabled after not seeing him for more than 20 days. He browsed the forum again and saw that his fans were worried and restless. Lu Qing suddenly felt guilty. He thought for a while and raised his voice. "Mom, take a video for me later." A video of normal activities. Then he would post it on Weibo to comfort everyone. Chapter 571. What video? For cooking? Qi Fang recalled when they moved. "Mom, you really can't get over it." Lu Qing smiled sheepishly. "Just a casual one." "Then hurry up. I still have to go grocery shopping." "Why did you have to be in such a rush when you called yesterday?" Qi Fang grumbled. "She really does look disgusted." Lu Qing complained inwardly. He got up and walked to the bottom of his calendar. He turned on the camera and switched to the shooting interface. Qi Fang took it and asked hesitantly, "Just press here?" "Yes. Press it after 20 or 30 seconds. Lu Qing reminded her. "Start when I say start." All right. Stop nagging." Qi Fang took 2 steps back and placed her son's image in the center of the phone. In the past, Lu Jisheng had a literary heart and loved to take photos. He always used to borrow his friends' cameras, and Qi Fang also had some basic skills. Because of this, Lu Cheng had several photo albums, including many of his dark history when he was young and ignorant. When their business declined and they had to run around for survival, the old couple finally gave up this hobby. Start. Lu Cheng got into a stance and slowly punched and kicked in front of the calendar. It was natural and elegant. It was much more stylish than the old men and women practicing Tai Chi in the square. He lowered his shoulders and was about to push out with his left hand when he felt a sudden chill in his body. He lost all feeling in his arm, leaving behind only a cold and stiff sensation. Lu Cheng was about to use the realm of encountering gods in the void to control his entire body. He shook his shoulders and pushed his arm out like an external weapon. However, he was a beat too slow. There was an obvious pause. "What's wrong?" Qi Fang asked, puzzled. Lu Cheng quickly put away his restlessness and forced a smile. That posture just now wasn't right. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing. "Mom, let's do it again." "Do it again." "Yo, you're getting more and more gentlemanly." Qi Fang didn't find anything amiss and mocked her son. Be gentlemanly and not warm. This was the most popular saying in Xiushan. "Mom, I'm a famous person now." Lu Cheng lowered his eyes and explained with a smile. After a short break, he repeated 7 or 8 moves. Because he controlled it well and the time was short, he didn't suffer any backlash and successfully finished the recording. After taking back his phone, Lu Qing stood there and watched his mom leave with her grocery cart. When he heard the door close, he let out a long sigh. After a brief discussion, he opened the app, logged into Weibo, and uploaded the video with a caption, "Recuperating." Not long after the post was sent out, it was flooded with comments. Lu Qing saw one reply after another. "It's good that you're fine. Wow, someone's dead. Master Tai Chi? I'm fine. Those people worries for nothing. It's sob sob sob, hug Chow Zi and cry together. Hug Fan Fan and cry out loud. How did you get injured? Don't tell me you were really attacked? It's too fake to say that he was attacked. Which inhuman would dare to guarantee that they could seriously injure Lu Qing? If he's a physical invulnerability expert, he won't just be severely injured." Amidst the heated discussions, the dark clouds hanging over Lu Qing's fans were swept away. Thinking of her son's exaggerated appetite, Qifeng bought a lot of groceries and dragged the cart back downstairs. In the shade of a tree not far away, a reporter wearing a pair of resin glasses was quietly watching. "So much. There aren't many customers coming in today. Did Lu Qing come home? The video he just posted did feel like home. My days of waiting here were not in vain." The reporter was so excited that his pores opened. He felt that he had found a big piece of news. He silently calculated the time. After dark, he followed a resident into the elevator and arrived at the entrance of the building that he had already investigated. Knock, knock, knock. The reporter knocked on the door. "Who is it?" Lu Jisheng, who was watching the news in the living room, opened the security door without looking through the peephole and saw a stranger. "Hello, I'm a reporter from Xing Province Evening News Online. I would like to interview Lu Qing," said the reporter with a smile. Lu Jisheng had only been interviewed by Xioshan's local media in the past year, and participated in topics such as Lu Qing's growth and the family upbringing of the heavenly son of the era. These were all prearranged. Therefore, he was inexperienced in such matters. He subconsciously turned his head and shouted in the direction of the room. "Chung, a reporter is looking for you." "He's really here." The reporter was delighted. The digital camera hanging in front of his chest couldn't wait. Lu Qing was at a stage where he didn't want to meet outsiders or be interviewed. He didn't want to expose his problems to the public. He took a deep breath, walked slowly to the door, and covered half of his face with his hand. "Please contact the Foreign Affairs team of Longhu Club for interviews." "Dad, close the door." "Okay." Lu Jisheng was stunned for a moment. He closed the door with a bang. The reporter didn't force his way in. He was facing a monster who could tear apart tigers and leopards. Even if he was injured and still recovering, he wasn't someone he could think of. Moreover, with Longhu Club as his backer, there was no way he could fake news of Lu Qing hitting a reporter. Of course, he wasn't disappointed. After this incident, the headlines were already in the bag. He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the elevator and typed on his phone. Lu Qing secretly returns home. Afraid of interviews, afraid of meeting people, afraid of hidden dangers. Well, I said afraid, not sure. When this news came out, the speculations and discussions that had died down were revived. Many reporters gathered in Xioshan, fighting to be the first to get an exclusive. Lu Qing couldn't get enough of the harassment. He had no choice but to ask Longhu to send security personnel to block the door. As for Dad and Mom on their way to work, there were security personnel on the surface and military in the dark. However, there were also guests who couldn't be stopped. After Longhu Club's foreign affairs team tactfully rejected the Xioshan government's proposal to visit, Director Xing Chenggu, who carried countless expectations and burdens, stepped into Lu Cheng's house as an elder. "Uncle Xing, take a seat." Lu Qing tried his best to relax and appear natural. If it was just a simple visit from an elder without any official show, he should be able to hold on until the other party left without making a fool of himself. Well, if he didn't exercise, it would be just like how he dealt with his cousins, second uncles, grandparents, and the rest. Xing Chenggu didn't stand on ceremony. He sat in the middle of the sofa and sized him up with a smile. "You seem to be in good spirits." I've recovered well. Lu Qing leaned forward, picked up the teapot, and poured a cup of Maojian green tea for Xing Chenggu. Xing Chenggu was in the police force and his rank wasn't low. He had heard a little about this incident. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he asked curiously, was the attacker really a physical invulnerability expert? If Lu Qing could kill a physical invulnerability expert with a single whip, it would completely overturn his understanding of martial arts. No, it's a different training system. He has some characteristics of a physical invulnerability expert in advance. Lu Qing answered truthfully, but didn't specify that it was a cultivator. Xing Chenggu was tactful and didn't ask. Just like when Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang, and Lu Qing were discussing the battle, he skimmed over the parts that were unclear and unwilling to explain. After chatting for a while, he saw that Lu Qing looked tired. He drank the rest of the tea and stood up with a chuckle. You've just recovered and need more rest. I won't disturb you. When you're fully recovered, come visit us. Of course. Lu Qing stood up with a smile and walked him to the door. Watching Xing Chenggu leave, the tiredness on his face immediately disappeared. But soon, his muscles started to contort and his expression became ferocious. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. After a few seconds, Lu Qing came back to life. After Xing Chenggu left Lu Cheng's house, he took the initiative to accept an interview and said loudly, "What can happen?" He's in good spirits. After this incident, the crazed visits to Lu Qing no longer existed. But there were still many reporters wandering around, trying to stop Lu Qing day after day. After 2 or 3 days, someone came to visit again. This time, it was his cousin Lu Yanwei and his second son Lu Yuanchang. During this time, Lu Yanwei, who had seen the world with his second son, realized that his current status came from his younger brother's identity and strength. He was more worried about Lu Qing's injury than anyone else in the family. Now that he saw with his own eyes that Lu Qing was safe and sound, he was completely relieved. We're family. Pour whatever you want to drink, and take whatever you want. You don't have to be polite, and I don't have to trouble myself. Lu Qing leaned on the sofa and said with a smile. Under such circumstances, he could go a few hours without having a relapse, and it would only happen once or twice at night when he slept. Okay. I like it when you say that. Erzi smiled and busied himself, really treating this place as his own home. After dinner, Lu Qing returned to the company and sent Lu Yanwei away. He smiled and looked at the scenery outside the window, waiting for his lover to come. 10 minutes later, a well-dressed and charming young woman entered the office and asked curiously, "You went to see Lu Qing?" "Yeah, he looked fine." Erzi smiled and answered, "But I heard that he's seriously injured. Maybe he's just pretending to be fine. Why did you go to see him so eagerly?" The young woman chuckled. Erzi smiled and said, "Even if he has no hope of reaching physical invulnerability in the future, he's still an inhuman mighty one, a big shot with the support of Ice God Sect and Longhu Club. He also has a physical invulnerability master. Even if he's completely crippled, what's the point of me going to see him and express my concern? It'd be a waste not to do it." Yes. You're always so reasonable." The young woman leaned over. In the early morning, Lu Qing rolled out of bed and stretched his arms and legs in his own room. He first did still stances, then slowly practiced the routine. His current body couldn't withstand real training. Even with the confrontation formula to speed up the healing process, it would still take more than a month before he could do recovery training. Currently, he could only do some small movements to harmonize his body and mind and assist in the healing process. Therefore, there was no need for him to go to the park. Besides, there were reporters lurking outside. A punch came from his waist. Lu Qing's body stiffened. Apart from his head and limbs, his torso was completely frozen. He couldn't move. This kind of situation kept happening in the past 10 minutes or so, which made him gradually irritated. He couldn't wait to punch himself. Phew, when Lin Ke was first injured, Master said that it was a blessing in disguise for him. With a comparison, he could feel stillness and withdrawal. I can't rush it. I'll try to understand something from not being able to fight. For example, the position of martial arts in my body, or a peaceful mentality. Lu Qing warned himself. He restrained his emotions and started practicing the routine again. But how could he adapt so quickly? How could he adjust his mentality so easily? Before he knew it, it had been a month since he returned home. He met the researcher from the previous time at the military base nearby. We haven't gotten any useful results. The tech geek lowered his head in shame. That's normal. If we succeed in our research every time, we would have dominated the universe long ago. Lu Qing suppressed his disappointment and forced a smile. The military personnel nodded and said with renewed vigor, "That's right." However, we managed to organize the information that Guhui missed and obtained a cultivation art with core elements. Chapter 572. A cultivation art with core elements? Lu Qing was overjoyed. He repeated it for confirmation. His sequela originated from his Jindan. Starting with a cultivation art was one of the ways to solve it. Now that there was a glimmer of hope, he couldn't help but feel excited. He might even be able to solve Ku and Master's problems. Yes, Guhui probably didn't intend to kill you in the beginning. He even planned to return to the Samano royal family. That's why he didn't take many of the important things with him and hid them in a secluded spot in the room. The military personnel answered half speculatively and half joyfully. We made a few copies and sent them to your master and the Queen of Thought. I brought one for you too. Thank you, thank you. Lu Qing couldn't hide his smile and said sincerely. After waiting for a few minutes, he got the cultivation method that he had sorted out from Gu Hui's notes on cultivation, reading list, and other materials. Although it was not complete, he could clearly see many things when he combined it with the incomplete version he had obtained before. For example, cultivators believed that there was a soul that was detached from the material world, and that the mind was an extension of it. Therefore, from the beginning of the body refining stage, they greatly increased the polishing of this aspect. They treated the tempering of the physical body as a secondary content, using the strength of the body to support the spirit and qi. During this process, the confrontation formula was the master of everything, while the 9 words formula was the overall internal training, which was a marvelous way to raise one's mental strength. Only when the mind could sense its surroundings and enter a new level would the cultivator nourish the physical body and improve in all aspects. Then they would refine the corresponding elixir and consume it. It would act as a catalyst in the cultivation of guiding the subtle changes in the mind. The initial effect was similar to Lu Cheng's first awakening of his superpower. The final goal was to achieve the state of his second awakening. At this stage, the cultivators would encounter the greatest difficulty, which was to use their mind as a lever and the superpower they had cultivated, true qi, as a push. They would fuse the mysterious soul that they spoke of and form a gold core that was between illusion and reality. Once the Jindan was formed, the cultivator would have all sorts of incredible achievements. Externally, they could communicate with nature and change reality. Internally, they could directly mobilize energy, eliminating the tedious procedures such as hand seals, making the use of supernatural abilities miraculous. In essence, as the Jindan gradually grew stronger, the physical body of a cultivator would become stronger again. Their overall combat strength would be equivalent to that of a martial artist with physical invulnerability. Each had their own characteristics and strengths. As for what it would be like to go further, Guhui did not go into detail, and did not record it down. The complete method was passed down orally and not in writing. Besides, it was vaguely mentioned in the notes that when Guhui was forming the core formation stage, he had been unable to make any progress for many years because of the lack of guidance and assistance from his seniors who had passed away long ago. He had been searching for his own kind, or cultivators from other schools, trying to talk with them and learn from them. Unfortunately, he had never found anyone. Spirit feeding the body. Maybe this can really cure Ku's congenital deficiency. The thought flashed through Lu Cheng's mind, and the corners of his mouth curled up. It was the first time in more than a month that he smiled without gloominess. Ku's current body refining martial arts had already reached the pinnacle. She was stuck at a bottleneck. First, she could improve her spirit according to the cultivation method, and then use her spirit to nourish her body. This might be a feasible way. Master's old injuries and my sequela might be able to be remedied with this. If it still doesn't work, when I gather all the 9 words formulas, I should be able to rely on them and the cultivation method to stimulate Longhu Immortal's core formation and obtain the complete method. Then I will be able to slowly control and digest it completely. The greatest pain in life is to have no hope. After seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, Lu Cheng's mood was instantly soothed. Even when the ice cold and the scorching heat alternated, he did not feel down. Speaking of which, I'm imitating Longhu Immortal and using balance and rotation to form the core. This is already different from normal martial arts. As for how to achieve physical invulnerability in the future, I've always had doubts in my heart. I feel that it might not work if I rely on the cultivation method of the past. Coincidentally, I'm currently at a low point, and now that I've obtained the core cultivation method, I should calm down and mix the two and find my own unique path. Once his emotions were at peace, Lu Cheng's thoughts ran wild, and he actually felt a little smug. Of course, he was very clear that all of this was his expectations for the best. Reality might not be so perfect, but if he didn't try, how would he know it would not work? Do your best and follow your destiny. Thinking of this, he took out his phone and called his master first. Hey brat, have you seen Go Hui's cultivation method? Geezer sure gulped down a mouthful of wine. He was the first to report that the military had not found any results for the time being. Lu Cheng chuckled and said, I saw it, and it corroborated with the incomplete version I obtained from Longhu Immortal's Jin Dan. Master, I think that the cultivation method of spirit nourishing the body should have some effect on you. Brat, do you think I'm blind? This old man has eaten more salt than you have eaten rice, and I noticed this as soon as I got it. Do I need you to remind me? Comrade Shi Jiangwo replied in a bad mood. I just want to respect my master. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched, and he did not know how to answer for a moment. Geezer Shi coughed twice and said, I've seen it, and the cultivation method alone won't be very effective. The cultivation method is linked from beginning to end, so you have to practice the beginning part of the cultivation method to temper the body as well, so that the body and mind can be coordinated and laid a good foundation for the subsequent cultivation method. Brat, don't neglect this. Also, what Longhu Immortal's incomplete version? Send it to my mailbox later. Yes, master. Lu Cheng felt warm in his heart. After hanging up the phone, he sent a message to Yenjika and told her about getting the core cultivation method. At the end of the message, he said, I'm thinking of coming to Connecticut in a few days and signing a 2-month contract. I'll stay at home until your winter break. My parents will find out sooner or later, and we can study the problem of spirit nourishing the body together. Besides, it was also to avoid the pack of hungry reporters. I'm looking forward to it. Yenjika replied with an expression of sitting obediently. Without waiting for Lu Cheng to reply, she sighed and covered her face in shame. It's over. The pure me has been completely tainted by you. I knew it was referring to the cultivation method, but when I saw the word spirit nourishing the body, the first thing that came to my mind was spirit nourishing the body. Seeing that Lu Cheng had hope of recovery, her mood turned for the better. Cough, you can also have a double meaning. Lu Cheng's mind seemed to have woken up from hibernation. It was no longer so gloomy, and it was much more lively. You'd better take a good rest. We'll talk about it again when you can officially temper yourself. Yenjika emphasized. Lu Cheng replied with an expression of salute. Yes, Coach Yen. 3 days later, the flight from Gaofen landed at Orion Airport in Connecticut. Lu Cheng and Yenjika walked hand in hand to the car park, where Aunt Du was waiting. While walking, Yenjika listened to the changes in her husband's body. Once she noticed that he was in a state of freezing or burning, she immediately stopped, turned her head, and pretended to talk to him. It was difficult for outsiders to notice anything unusual, and no one would look at them. This consideration from her made Lu Cheng's hidden worries disappear, and his heart was filled with warmth. I'm used to it now, and it's not as unbearable as before. Even if the path of cultivation doesn't work, I might be able to become immune to it in the future. Lu Cheng joked. Yenjika was stunned for a moment and blurted out, Don't talk nonsense. You can't curse yourself. She hurriedly spat a few times. Ba ba ba, Child's words carry no harm. Let the wind blow it away. Ka seems to be more nervous than me. Lu Cheng, who could already find joy in the midst of suffering, decided not to do so again. After walking for a while, the two met Aunt Du and got into the car. At this moment, Lu Cheng's phone received a message from Smith, the fallen Spider-Man. I haven't seen you for a few months, and I actually miss you a little. Recently, the internet has been discussing your injuries. You seem to be doing well? My recovery is better than expected, but if I want to participate in combat, I'll need about 2 more months, Lu Cheng answered truthfully. Very good. Also, congratulations, your danger level has been temporarily lowered, and you don't need our 24-hour surveillance anymore. However, I will still follow you. The higher-ups have given me a mission to observe your recovery and any hidden problems, and to gather information to assess your future potential, Smith shrugged and typed. Lu Cheng thought for about 10 seconds and replied, then you will come into contact with new things during this period. What? Smith, who was originally relaxed, suddenly felt nervous, and his hair stood on end. It was just like the first few times he saw Lu Cheng enter the country, and was afraid that he would cause something big again. Is it too late for me to say MMP? Lu Cheng chuckled and said, don't worry, it's good for you. He pressed send and put down the phone. He didn't avoid Aunt Du, who was driving, and turned to ask his fairy. After the spirit nourishes the body, you can logically switch to the path of cultivation, or you can stop here and experience the taste of withdraw, force concentration, and continue martial arts. Which do you want to choose? Yenjika pursed her lips, rolled her eyes, and paused for a few words. If it works, I still prefer martial arts. Seriously, Cheng, I don't even know if this method will work. Yes, but you have to be mentally prepared. The early stages of cultivation are relatively difficult, especially the part where the spirit nourishes the body. Lu Cheng reminded her. I've been here for so many years, and I don't mind waiting for a few more years, Yenjika said with a faint smile. Oh right, did the martial arts club members succeed in meditation? Lu Cheng changed the topic. The girl thought seriously and replied. I didn't go after that, but from the looks of George and Wilton, they didn't seem to have entered. Why are you asking this? Lu Cheng chuckled and answered, looking for a few willing test subjects to explore the fusion of martial arts and cultivation, and to lay a solid foundation for my future path. Maybe the solution to the sequela would also depend on this. Of course, the teaching, in America wouldn't involve the advanced parts. Chapter 573. You sound like a master when you say that. Yenjika's eyes lit up when she heard Lu Cheng's answer, and she made fun of him. Lu Cheng didn't dwell on the topic. Instead, they talked about Yenjika's life in Connecticut, and scolded a certain racist professor with her. As the sky darkened, the car reached home. While Aunt Du was preparing dinner, Lu Cheng pulled Yenjika up to the second floor. He took out the copy of Gu Hui's cultivation manual from his backpack and instructed her solemnly. First, read through the first part, then visualize the confrontation formula to subdue the distracting thoughts. Then, train your mind according to the manual, and complete the specific training of the body. Cultivation had its own body training manual. External training was similar to martial arts, but internal training relied on the mind and visualization. Yenjika nodded and took the manual. She sat by the bed and read it seriously, asking Lu Cheng for guidance from time to time. After a long while, she kicked off her slippers, crossed her legs, and faced the sky. In her mind, she visualized the ancient confrontation formula that she had just grasped not long ago. She felt all her thoughts return to normal, and her mind and body were pure and clear. Based on this foundation, she followed the manual described in Lu Cheng's advice. She lowered the fire in her heart, thickened her kidneys, and harmonized her 5 viscera and 6 bowels. She used this to temper and nourish her mind to the limit. She changed her visualization, and used her mind to guide the 5 elements in her body to strengthen her body. After more than 20 minutes, she opened her eyes. Her eyes were as dark as a speck of ink, but there was a hidden light in them. It feels pretty good. Yenjika's dimples slowly bloomed under Lu Cheng's attentive gaze. She looked up and pouted slightly, saying, It's fine. Cheng, Are you sure you want to teach this to George and the rest? Not to mention that they can't enter meditation or visualize, which means they can't subdue distracting thoughts. Just the words like dragon tiger water separation, fire and heart, and kidney water will be enough to trouble them. Lu Cheng was speechless. He had already considered and prepared for the problem of not being able to enter meditation. However, the problem of understanding the manual was more specific. Just by looking at Chinese, I didn't have the foundation of the previous few years of contact with similar things, so I almost couldn't understand it myself. When I was explaining to Ku just now, I almost broke out in a cold sweat. I was frozen and burned once. If this thing were to be translated into a foreign language, it would be more like a heavenly book, right? Seeing her husband at a loss, Yanjika pondered and said, "We need to extract the essence, get rid of the twists and turns, and express everything in modern terms. Although it might not be accurate enough, it's fine as long as the meaning is on point." After saying that, she volunteered. "Come, big sister will help you." Lu Cheng and Yanjika huddled together and began the difficult task of translating, with their ears rubbing against each other. This continued until 10:30 at night. Even when it was time for dinner, they were not idle. "Well, it's finally done." Yanjika stretched her back elegantly. The so-called done was only referring to the first part. Lu Cheng moved his lower neck and took out a pen and paper. Sitting on the writing table, he focused his mind and calmed his breath. He visualized the ancient characters and smoothly sketched out the confrontation that purified the body and mind. "Not bad, it's done in one go." He shook the paper happily. Completing a matter related to cultivation without any repercussions made him feel as if he was as good as new. It's a pity that one can't be so stubborn. Just as he finished speaking, Lu Cheng felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His whole body was filled with coldness, and he stood rooted to the ground like a statue. After 7 or 8 seconds, he recovered and pretended to smile normally. "This can force them to enter meditation." "Yes, yes." Yanjika looked at him calmly. She didn't dodge or avoid it, as if everything was a common occurrence in life. This calmed the gloominess and frustration in Lu Cheng's heart unknowingly. After washing up, Yanjika, wearing an off-shoulder nightgown, crawled into bed and pressed herself against Lu Cheng's body. Suddenly, she felt that his body temperature was boiling, and his muscles were tight and hard like a rock. Clearly, he was experiencing a burning. Just as she was about to extend her hand to pass on the coolness, Yanjika felt Lu Cheng relax and heard him exhale. "There shouldn't be any more tonight." Lu Cheng tilted his head and smiled. Looking at his warm smile as if nothing had happened, Yanjika's heart ached and her eyes turned red. She quickly raised the corner of her mouth and said sweetly, "Then let this fairy give you a good night kiss." She took the initiative to wrap her arms around Lu Cheng's back, half closed her starry eyes, and delivered her pink lips. With their skin touching, Lu Cheng's nose filled with a subtle fragrance. Lu Cheng delicately outlined her lips, parted her teeth, and touched her tongue. Since he was injured, the couple's daily kisses were only a greeting ceremony due to their physical and mental state. They didn't go any further. Now that they saw the light at the end of the tunnel, they unloaded a lot of burdens. Their lips and tongues gradually intertwined. It was as if they were back before the Battle of the Kings. They passed on all the worries, sadness, pain, and disappointment that they usually suppressed in their hearts, hidden under their laughter, and didn't want to show to each other. They were comforted and dispersed. They didn't have much lust, but their hearts were connected. After a kiss, their eyes met and palms touched. Both of them felt relaxed as if they had shaken off layers of dust. "Good night." Yanjika's eyes sparkled. "Good night." Lu Cheng smiled and replied softly. They lay down again. After a few minutes, Yanjika suddenly thought of something and said, "Cheng, you're not asleep yet, right? I have a serious academic problem to discuss with you." Curious Yanjika is online? Lu Cheng tilted his head in confusion. "What's the problem?" "Your bones and muscles are still very weak now. They're not suitable for strenuous exercise for the time being." "Well, I'm saying if, after you officially start training, if the sequela hasn't healed yet, at least not for the time being, will it still happen?" Yanjika hypothesized a situation. As she spoke, she turned her back to Lu Cheng and looked at the wall as if she was reflecting. Ah! Lu Cheng was stunned for a few seconds before he came back to his senses. He wanted to laugh and sigh at the same time. Theoretically, yes. Then I'll have to work harder. The girl's voice became softer and softer, like that of a mosquito. If Cheng keeps holding it in, it's easier for him to get irritated. It's easier for him to get into a dead end when it comes to the sequela. Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. He knew how much courage his thin-skinned little fairy had to muster before she could say this. To be honest, if Yanjika didn't mention it, he would have a lot of misgivings and wouldn't dare to try, which would make him even more depressed. Yes. He nodded vigorously. He felt that the thought of teasing her just now was disrespectful to Yanjika's feelings. The next afternoon, in the martial arts club, George and Wilton, who were sparring in the boxing ring, suddenly heard a series of exclamations. They stopped what they were doing and turned their heads to look. They saw the powerful martial artist who was rumored to be seriously injured and recuperating appeared at the door with his girlfriend. Lu. Long time no see. George jumped off the ring excitedly and rushed over. His blonde hair was flying and his sweat was dripping. He had a new tattoo on his bare arm. It was the symbol of the mysterious Eastern spirit beast, the Ho. Lu Cheng nodded in greeting. When everyone had gathered around, he looked around and asked directly, "Have any of you successfully entered meditation?" The jubilant atmosphere was instantly silenced, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over it. No. The Caucasian girl Colleen lowered her head in shame. "No, none of you." The freckled Wilton answered dejectedly. "Didn't they say that Chinese people were used to making small talk and asking if they had eaten? Why did Lu hurt everyone the moment he opened his mouth?" "None of you." Lu Cheng nodded slowly and went straight to the point. "I've learned a new technique that I want to combine with my original martial arts. However, I'm no longer at that stage, so I don't dare to try anything too profound for fear of harming my body. Do you want to learn? This will help you enter meditation and change your original talent, allowing you to improve your combat skills. Of course, I can't guarantee that this new technique won't cause any problems. On the contrary, I'd like to remind you that it may cause you to never be able to become stronger again." George and the others were stunned when they heard this. They were excited about the possible benefits, and their breathing became rough. They were shocked and afraid of the serious consequences, so they were on high alert. After a long while, George asked hesitantly, "What new technique is it? Which sect is it from?" "It belongs to one of the ancient Chinese Taoist sections. Those who practice it are called Yushi." Lu Cheng briefly explained. Wilton, Colleen, and the rest looked at each other, unable to make up their minds. After a few minutes, George gritted his teeth and stood up. "I'm willing to give it a try." After shouting this sentence, he turned to look at the club members and said loudly, "Let's go. Do you think it's possible for you to become stronger? Do you think you still have hope? Whether it's the combat of the various sects or the Chinese martial arts, we can't even get started. It can't get any worse than this. Maybe there will be a miracle?" After George's encouragement, Wilton and the rest no longer hesitated and joined in. Lu Cheng nodded slightly and gestured for Yanjika to unfold the confrontation character. Everyone in the martial arts club stared at it and sat cross-legged. Under the influence of the charm, Colleen, the Caucasian girl, gradually felt her mind relax. It was just like when she was observing the gemstones when she was learning how to fight. She felt calmer, as though she wasn't thinking about anything. How magical! As soon as she thought of this, she almost withdrew from this wonderful feeling. Unlike before, Lu Cheng didn't let them experience anything. Instead, he spoke rhythmically with a deep voice, guiding them to suppress their distracting thoughts. In the parking lot outside the martial arts club, Smith wore his headphones and listened to the teaching. Imagine that there's a pool of water in your kidneys. Imagine that there's a flame burning in your heart. It's not real. As he listened, Smith slowly became lost. He subconsciously spoke in fluent Chinese. What the hell? Chapter 574. The lungs are breathing organs. When inhaling, it means to hide and bury deeply. When exhaling, it reveals its sharpness. We can see it as metal. It can be buried underground as a mineral. There are also times when it is sharpened and shines brilliantly. In the ancient Chinese view of the five elements, metal breeds water and water nourishes life. The oxygen in the lungs eventually melts into the blood and is carried to various parts of the body to nourish metabolism. What is blood? It's water. Isn't this the actual meaning of metal breeds water? Lu Cheng's explanation of the cultivation techniques had not only imprecise translations, but also self-modifications. Since the development of martial arts, the original correspondence of the five elements had been adjusted according to modern anatomical findings and modern medical viewpoints. The useful parts had been fed back and opened up many blind spots in science and technology. This was also the source of continuous innovation and improvement of internal training techniques in the past 100 years. It was also proof that the present was better than the past. What Lu Cheng wanted to do was to blend cultivation and martial arts and walk a path that was different from the two. Naturally, he couldn't copy Ge Hui's techniques in his experiment. Other than helping George, Wilton and the rest, it would be of no use to him. He combined the newest concepts of internal training with martial arts and made improvements to the cultivation techniques. During this process, he mixed in the ideas he learned from the information explosion era. Just like when he first formed his dam through balanced rotation, he didn't imitate the original Longhu Immortal. Instead, he made a new one using the astronomical universe as a blueprint and had a different meaning. Regarding this, he couldn't help but thank modern education and university life. This gave him a solid foundation for self-learning, broadened his horizons, and the ability to think logically. He was different from those martial artists who only received basic quality education in martial arts schools and sections. The internal training techniques he taught now had obvious personal characteristics. They could be considered as Lu's five elements. All living things seek energy, and all humans seek the light. This was the most basic biological law. Without the light and heat from the huge fireball known as the sun, even races that liked the dark would have their energy depleted and fall into absolute coldness and silence. In the human body, warm blood gushed out from the heart. It was the source of life. In the overall structure of the human body, its position was equivalent to the sun. It was fire. Fire was the beginning of civilization and the source of life. Water not only referred to the kidneys, but also included the body fluids in the entire circulatory system. The kidneys symbolized the cleansing, decontamination, and erasing side of water. The wood cleans the air, and the liver cleans the human body. Both sides work together to solidify energy, complete degradation, and store it. The spleen was usually deep, burying old age, nurturing blood, and filtering all kinds of things, like thick earth. Of course, Lu Cheng didn't have absolute confidence in the improvements he had made. He believed that there would definitely be problems. That was why he first found a group of voluntary lab rats to experiment on. Every day, he would check their bodies with his auditory skill and monitor for changes so that he could correct and adjust them in time. During the teaching, he would occasionally be frozen and burned, and he would disguise such abnormalities as the appearance of thinking. It was only when the first lesson was coming to an end that he put away the illustration of the confrontation formula and got Heroine Yen to demonstrate the training routine of the 24 blizzard strikes to George, Colleen, and the rest who had regained consciousness. What on earth are you teaching? Lu Cheng's phone had already received a message from Smith. You don't have to understand. Just do as you're told, he replied with a smile. Smith wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. That's what all the cult leaders say. If you're interested, you can go to the Chinese internet and search for cultivation. Oh right, don't search for immortal cultivation. It will mislead you into staying up all night. Lu Cheng kindly reminded him to prevent foreigners who didn't know the truth from getting into trouble. More than a month later, in the couple's bedroom in the northern district of Connecticut. How's it going? Lu Cheng looked at Yenjika, who was sitting cross-legged beside the bed, and had just finished her internal training. He watched as she slowly opened her eyes. Little Fairy has mastered the first part of the cultivation technique. Yenjika's beautiful and lively eyes looked up as she pondered and said, My spirit has indeed improved and become more resilient than before. However, I'm still far from being able to nourish my body. I estimate that it will take at least 5 years, or even more, to refine and nourish my spirit. Lu Qing nodded slightly and said thoughtfully, "That's normal. Currently, it's the conventional Dharma access. As for the Longhu Immortal, the core and most effective way to temper the spirit is the 9 words formula. If you can gather all of them, you might be able to start nourishing your body within a year." Yes. Yenjika undid her ponytail and let her beautiful hair fall like a waterfall. She bit her lip for a second and said happily, "After my spirit improved, my body seems to have changed a little. I feel that nourishing my innate body might really be effective." "What changes?" Lu Qing asked curiously. Yenjika pointed to the part of her forehead covered by her slanted bangs, and then pointed to her back. "I had a few pimples before and they left a mark. I thought that I would need to take care of them for a while, and that they would disappear before the new year. However, they faded very quickly this month. In the past few days, they even showed signs of speeding up. Whoosh, they were gone." During the days when Lu Qing was injured, she was worried and sad. So many emotions had accumulated in her heart that her skin, which didn't have many pimples, started to swell in different places. "Not bad. Maybe you can use this to develop the female beauty maintenance technique in the future." Lu Qing chuckled and praised. "Then you'll be financially independent soon." Yenjika smiled and said with her sweet dimples, "How about you? How's the effect of nourishing your body?" Lu Qing had long reached the realm of all-seeing God. His spirit was abnormally strong and had surpassed the minimum requirement of nourishing the body by many times. During this period, he had been experimenting step by step. My body is inhuman. My nourishment has only improved a little. It has no effect on suppressing the freezing and burning effects. Moreover, I suspect that the aftereffects are rooted in the body. It's not something that can be resisted, immune or adapted to just because the body is stronger." Lu Qing pondered for a few seconds and answered honestly, "Looks like this path won't work. The focus should be on combining the 9 words formula and the martial arts of cultivation." He spoke calmly and without any dejection or disappointment in his eyes. When Yenjika heard the first part, she was still worried that she had started an unpleasant topic. However, when Lu Qing finished his answer, she couldn't help but say in a deep and gentle voice, "Chung, I feel that you've become more mature." He had a charm that stood firm despite the vicissitudes of life. Thinking of this, Yenjika waved her hand and said, "Kid, your temperament has grown again." "Hey, what kind of address is that?" Lu Qing was amused. "This is the tone of a coach." Yenjika raised her chin proudly. "That's how Coach sure is like." Lu Qing smiled and shook his head. He examined himself and changed the topic. "However, with the nourishment of my spirit, my healing speed has increased again. Next week, I should be able to attempt force concentration and undergo restorative training. Congratulations. Yenjika smiled like a flower, her radiance illuminating the room. Lu Qing chuckled and said, "When the time comes, someone made a promise." "What did you promise?" Yenjika's eyes widened innocently. She raised her voice and said, "I didn't promise anything." In the blink of an eye, it was Monday afternoon again. When Lu Qing and Yenjika stepped into the martial arts club, their vision blurred. They almost suspected that they had come to the wrong place. In front of them stood a group of people dressed strangely. However, some of them had blonde hair while others had blue eyes. The contrast between the two made them look very strange. "Crooked Taoist?" Lu Qing asked curiously. "Are you guys at a masquerade party?" He almost blurted out the word cosplay. "No Lu, no coach, I've successfully entered meditation." George, who had blonde hair and blue eyes and tattoos that extended to the back of his hand, shouted excitedly. "I think I should be a beginner Taoist. I've done a lot of research and custom-made my own outfit. I'm very proud of it. It's unique, powerful, and mysterious." He was very excited and rambled on. However, Lu Qing understood the main point. After a month of repeated attempts by using the confrontation formula and subduing distracting thoughts, George had finally entered meditation on his own. He had taken a solid step forward. Of course, Such people who relied on external forces were definitely inferior to those who practiced it on their own. Their foundation was weaker, and it would be more difficult for them to advance further in the future. However, to Lu Cheng, if there was a Dan equilibrium expert among all the students present, he would have achieved his goal. He would have solidified the foundation of the fusion of cultivation and martial arts. I've entered meditation too. I'm also a Taoist. The white girl Colleen was so excited that she almost kissed Lu Cheng. However, she was stopped by Yen Zhika, who knew their habits. We'll become Taoist too. Wilton and the rest saw hope and were unusually excited. A group of Taoists with white, black, or brown skin. Why does it feel like a mythical monster in human form? Lu Cheng laughed involuntarily. He was happy that his students had finally made a breakthrough. Well, cultivators mainly rely on long-range attacks and are elegant. After I combine martial arts, most of the time I'll be smashing with my basket-sized fists or kicking in the groin. This style is really strange. For the rest of the class, everyone studied very seriously. They did half the work, but twice the effort. Lu Cheng talked about a few new things. When he was leaving, he received a message from Smith. Lu, that outfit is very cool. Remember to send me the address of the custom-made outfit. You want to disguise yourself as a Taoist? Lu Cheng and Yen Zhika looked at each other and smiled. After returning home, Lu Cheng found an empty space and closed his eyes to reflect on himself. Yen Zhika waited beside him, a little expectant and a little worried. Cheng is going to undergo restorative training in a while. After a few minutes, a crackling sound came from within Lu Cheng's body. It was like spring thunder before waking up from hibernation. He took a deep breath and gathered his force, chi, blood, and spirit in his lower abdomen. They condensed into a ball and rotated in a balanced manner. In the center of this vast starry sky, specks of light converged to form a crimson object that resembled the sun. It and Lu Cheng's Big Dan were interconnected. It was hard to tell which was the reflection, and which was the real thing. Lu Cheng's mind was in turmoil. With a shake of his spirit, the Dan Qi suddenly exploded and dispersed. What's wrong? Yen Zhika asked with concern when she saw that her husband's expression was not right. Lu Cheng frowned slightly. Half puzzled and half happy, he answered. I saw the golden Dan. Chapter 575. Jindan. Yen Zhika's brows furrowed slightly, her gaze confused. Shortly after, her eyes widened as she blurted out. Longhu Immortal's Jindan? Yes. Lu Cheng nodded. As he recalled, he described, it seems to have really spread and merged with the origin. However, it still maintains a connection with each other, and has an independent and complete structure. It seems to have expanded and blurred many times, becoming a parasitic object of the human body Big Dan. Only when I use force concentration to gather all my essence, chi, spirit, and willpower can it temporarily collapse and return to its original state. You can see it now. That's amazing. Yen Zhika sighed subconsciously. She then pondered for a moment before asking. Then can you affect it now? Can you use the confrontation formula to stimulate it? If he didn't have the Jindan back then, Cheng's sequela would most likely be related to overexertion and the deficit of the origin. He wouldn't have suffered from the frequent attacks of freezing and burning. I wonder which condition would be easier to recover from. Confrontation formula? How can I use the confrontation formula when I'm balancing my Jindan? Asked Lu Cheng in amusement. However, just as he finished speaking, a thought flashed through his mind. He suddenly had an idea. He paused for a moment and said, it's not like there's really no way. My Jindan is different from other martial artists. I can maintain it for quite some time. As soon as he thought of it, he lowered his waist and raised his hands to form the confrontation formula. Following that, he withdrew his chi and blood, sank his spirit, and gathered his force. He gathered all his senses into a single point. Ice and fire circled around it, rotating steadily. This point was like a boundless starry sky. It was pitch black and cold, with the great sun as the star. Just like the real universe, each had its own function, maintaining a delicate balance. It slowly expanded until the end. Inside the universe, a cluster of nebulas gathered and manifested. The ice crystals were dazzling and scorching. It was the Jindan of the Longhu immortal. While in the state of force concentration, Lu Qing couldn't maintain the state of all-seeing God. His will, or rather his consciousness, had become a part of the human body Big Dan, and shrunk into the boundless starry sky. However, with the help of encountering gods in the void, he allowed his consciousness to rise to the peak of the universe. Looking down at everything from above, he controlled his chi, blood, spirit, and ice and fire force to change the layout of darkness and light. Stroke by stroke, he outlined the ancient and profound confrontation character. The appearance of the confrontation character, which purified the mind and body, connected with the prearranged hand seal, and instantly evoked the mystery. Right at this moment, the golden core suddenly trembled and rippled. The stars rotated and similarly formed a confrontation word, the confrontation word that was located at the core. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Dazzling light turned into a brush and wrote another Dao technique. The content of the words was very familiar to Lu Qing. It was the first part of the cultivation techniques that he had been studying recently. At the same time, the other 6 spots of the Jindan also had dazzling lights surrounding the confrontation word. They wanted to form a whole, but they were still a little short. However, Lu Qing felt that his connection with the Jindan had strengthened a little. Feeling discomfort in his body, he didn't force it. After memorizing it for a while, he released the human body Big Dan, and felt the surge of strength. He felt the long-awaited invincibility. In the blink of an eye, an icy chill surged and numbed his legs. This was already a daily occurrence for Lu Qing. He didn't care about the stiffness. Shivering from the cold, he smiled at Yin Zhika. I can really activate it. And I even spat out the opening chapter. If not for your reminder, I wouldn't even have thought of trying it. You're welcome. This is the job of a coach. Yin Zhika raised her head delightedly. Phew. When the 9 words formula is complete and forms a whole, there will most likely be some changes. Even if it doesn't help me resolve the after effects, just the deepening of the connection will give me an opportunity to digest it. Lu Qing moved his legs that had recovered and said, I'll try again and memorize the opening chapter completely. He rested for a while and tried again. With the help of Little Fairy, he gradually replicated the opening chapter of the Longhu Immortal's original version of the technique. It's a little different from the one I got from Gu Hui. Yin Zhika pressed her right index finger to her lower lip. She was half puzzled and half guessing. That's normal. Martial arts have been improving for so many years. Cultivators don't have to take the words of their predecessors as a reference that can never be wrong. Lu Qing chuckled. I feel like you're insulting someone. The girl pursed her lips and smiled. Lu Qing thought for a few seconds and said, Let's study it later and see what's different. Think about the meaning and logic of such a change. Maybe we can understand something by analogy. Okay. Yin Zhika nodded obediently. Immediately after, she asked with dimples, Why not now? I have to temper my Emperor Yin force and Ice Spirit force. At the same time, I have to do some data collection to see if I can find a pattern. Lu Qing didn't hide his thoughts. What pattern? Yin Zhika was confused. Lu Qing paused and said, I've been recording all this time to see if there's a correlation between the frozen or burning parts and the way and position of my movements. Even if I find a solution to this after effect, it might take 1.5 years to completely eliminate it. During such a long time, I can't guarantee that there won't be any accidents. Therefore, I want to do my best to recover some of my combat strength in advance. Cuckoo, think about it. If I can figure out the pattern and determine how many times the Ice Spirit force will cause the cold backlash, and how many times the Emperor Yen force will cause the burning effect, and where it will affect. Is it the hands, the feet, or half of the body? Then I can design and control it in advance to avoid triggering the hindrance of the whole body. I can use the parts affected by the sequela as external weapons and change the way I fight. This way, even if I face an opponent of the same level, I won't be insta-killed, and I won't be bullied when I'm down. Yin Zhika listened to Lu Cheng's tireless description of his aftereffects and the countermeasures he planned to make without any negative emotions. He was methodical, gentle and calm. Suddenly, she felt that her Chung had become a real man, from his body to his heart. In the face of danger and setbacks, he didn't cover his eyes with anger, and didn't cover his heart with fear. He carried the responsibility and moved forward steadily like a rock. Her eyes deepened and gradually brightened. She watched as Lu Qing set up his stance and struck out with force. Sometimes it was interrupted by the cold backlash, and sometimes it was tightened by the burning effect, but he never stopped. Beads of sweat rolled down his face. Lu Qing had just recovered and didn't dare to practice too much. He stopped his moves and exhaled. Ice Spirit Force will cause the burning effect twice, and Emperor Yen Force will cause the freezing effect twice. If I use them alternately, I can last a total of 4 times. The final force will be the standard, but the effect will spread throughout the whole body. This is a normal punch and kick. I'll try it tomorrow and see how it works with the Fire Sect and Ice Sect dance stage secret arts. If I don't use force, I can't find the pattern yet. Yenjika pursed her lips and smiled faintly. It feels like a qualitative or quantitative experiment. Actually, it's more or less the same. Lu Qing recovered from the burning pain of his flesh and blood. He smiled and walked into the house to wash his body. It was just 4 o'clock, and the sky was bright. It was still early for dinner. The couple retreated into the bedroom, and began to compare the opening chapter left by Longhu Immortal with Gu Hui's cultivation method. They discussed the principles behind every improvement. This didn't mean that the present would definitely win against the past. It was just that if there were no powerful beings at the beginning of the universe and no origin creatures that understood all the rules, then it would be normal for the present to win against the past. Yenjika was already a beginner in cultivation, so she was very interested in this. After she finished her research, she continued to talk to Lu Qing about similar issues. She felt like she couldn't stop, so she didn't notice that he was gradually distracted, until a hand circled around her waist and reached under her clothes. The girl turned her head blankly and blurted out, "We haven't had dinner yet." She knew that Chung was in a good mood today, just like herself. She also knew that he had been holding it in for more than 3 months, both physically and emotionally. However, she expected to cooperate with him before going to bed. Who knew, this hooligan? It's still early, just past 5. Which day do we not eat at 7? Lu Qing kept kissing the girl's slender and beautiful neck as his right hand slowly moved up. It's broad daylight. Yenjika scolded, with her cheeks slightly red. Lu Qing strode out and pulled the curtains, filling the room with darkness. He then turned around and smiled. It's dark. Yenjika didn't know what to say. She was going to argue for a bit more, but when she saw Lu Cheng's stiff and sluggish steps, her heart softened. She bit her lips and snorted. She turned her head to the side and let her husband hug her body. She took the initiative to reach out her hand to cooperate. During dinner, Lu Qing lowered his head to eat. From time to time he would receive angry glares from his little fairy beside him. She was radiant and beautiful, but she would occasionally frown. Life seemed to be on the right track again. These days lasted until the couple's winter vacation. At this time, there were more and more people in Lu Cheng's cultivation preschool who had entered meditation. They had also adjusted their techniques to the point where there weren't many problems. Of course, George and the others wouldn't be able to achieve force concentration and Dan equilibrium without more than a year of practice. Before returning to Xioshan, Lu Qing and Yenjika went to the military base again. As usual, they tested the data and contributed blood. As usual, there were no research results. But I have good news for you. The military tech geek pushed his glasses up. What good news? Lu Qing and Yenjika asked in unison. The military personnel took out a silver bracelet with a pendant and said, "Following Gu Hui's lead, we found the formation formula. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."